the mental transmitter of Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126. Do nothing? Do nothing? Alex looked at Emma in disbelief. Are we just going to watch him persecute mutants? Then what can you do? Emma shrugged, her expression nonchalant. Kill him and be done with it. Alex froze, lost in thought for a moment before mumbling, I'm asking you this, if you don't kill him, then hide from him. Emma sighed, somewhat helplessly. If he can't find you, nothing will happen, we're safe. But what about the mutants out there? Alex realized the problem had returned to square one. Aren't they all in hiding? Emma asked. Before the war, the vast majority of mutants were unknown. After the war, they'll be even more hidden. Don't worry. Hearing this, Alex suddenly realized that mutants had been around for a long time. If it weren't for Sebastian Shaw, no one would have believed in their existence. Okay, then do nothing. Relieved of his burden, Alex suddenly realized there seemed to be nothing left for him to do. There was no need to worry about the Hellfire Club. Hydra, tucked away in Japan, was safe. With Emma in charge of the Savage Lands, everything was fine. With Nick and the others watching over Steve and Bucky, he couldn't intervene in the Soviet Union. Nothing to do. Emma was like a worm in Alex's stomach. Though she couldn't communicate telepathically, she understood his thoughts and instantly saw what he was thinking. Why don't you help me run X Academy? Alex shook his head rapidly, refusing to comply. Forget it, I'll leave it to you. I'm not good at it. With that, Alex, fearing Emma would come looking for him again, vanished. Emma smiled wryly, shook her head, turned, and walked out of the temple, quickly getting back to work. After leaving the Savage Lands, Alex had nothing to do and began wandering the world, aimlessly, going wherever he pleased, staying for as long as he pleased, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. This was Alex's favorite thing to do in his previous life. But after a few visits, Alex lost interest. It had only been a few years since World War II, and many places were still undergoing post-war reconstruction. Neither the natural scenery nor the urban architecture had the splendor of later times, and after a few glances, it was easy to tire of it. Lying on the snub-nosed Sphinx, gazing up at the azure sky, Alex yearned for the future. If only I had a computer. I could read novels, play games, and rewatch Japanese romances when I had time. How wonderful. I wonder when the Japanese will finally make a romance. I'm really looking forward to it. Alex drifted off to sleep and soon drifted off to dreamland. There was no in his dream, but there was Fan Bingbing, sporting an odd smoky eye. Not far away, Halle Berry, with her dyed white hair, sat on the steps, flanked by several burly men, one of whom was black, holding a gun. This scene seems familiar. Alex turned and surveyed his surroundings. A thought struck him, and he remembered where he was. At that moment, someone suddenly shouted, "They're coming." With those words, dark shadows descended from the sky like rain. Sentinels. Alex's face paled, his body trembling uncontrollably even in his sleep. 3-meter-tall sentinel robots dropped from the sky, their powerful bodies cratering the ground. The overwhelming force of the sentinels separated everyone, then, like in the movies, killed them one by one. Even a powerful like Magneto was forced to meet his end. Watching them die before him, Alex was filled with grief and indignation, roaring and charging at the sentinels. Unfortunately, just a moment later, Alex was stabbed through the chest by a sentinel robot. The intense pain of the wound and the fear of impending death suddenly woke Alex. He frantically turned around and looked around. When he realized it was all a dream, Alex breathed a sigh of relief. That's good, it was just a dream. Thinking of the dream scene, Alex immediately stood up. He didn't want to see the ending of the movie. No, I have to do something. As soon as he finished speaking, Alex froze. He realized that he seemed to have overlooked something, a very important point. In the movie X-Men Days of Future Past, Wolverine traveled back in time and ultimately changed the future. The scene at the end of the movie seemed like it should have been a happy ending. They did it. Alex jumped up excitedly. If they can do it, so can I. Alex's powerful memory came into play at this moment. Scenes from the movie and his past life replayed in Alex's mind bit by bit, and Alex had to find the key to changing the future. The movie was long, and it took a long time, but Alex finally found the key. Magneto wanted to kill the President of the United States as a warning to others, but was ultimately shot by Mystique. Later, influenced by Professor X, Mystique gave up on killing the Shorty Striker. The future changed in that moment. As the movie continued to play in his mind, Alex couldn't help but ponder, should I direct and act out this melodramatic drama myself? After some thought, Alex rejected the idea. It could backfire. No, this melodrama isn't the point, Alex thought, and suddenly realized. Neither Magneto nor Professor X was the real point, Mystique was the real point. In the movie, Mystique wasn't as radical as Magneto, nor as good-hearted as Professor X. She simply wanted revenge for the mutants. From beginning to end, she simply wanted to kill the Shorty Striker, who persecuted them. She wasn't a good person, but she wasn't a bad person either. Alex's thoughts grew increasingly excited, and he kept repeating, she caused what was supposed to be a tragic future, but in the end, she changed it. She shot the villain Magneto in front of the entire world, saved the President of the United States, and finally gave up her hatred. She made the world recognize mutants again, and that mutants can be good people. Alex roared with excitement. He had found a solution to Emma's no need to talk about it idea. Seeing Alex's smug look, Emma, who was busy dealing with the affairs of the X school, couldn't help but complain, "What are you laughing at? You look so happy, but you don't even help me." Alex reached out and snatched the documents from Emma, tossing them aside. He grabbed Emma's shoulders and excitedly said, "Emma, I found a way to transform our competitive relationship into a symbiotic one. Are you crazy?" Emma rolled her eyes and ignored Alex. She didn't believe him. "Really? I really found a way. What is it? Make a movie." Chapter 127 Movie. After a heartfelt confession, Alex finally got to the point. "Now, what we need is a first film to build our company's reputation. Do you have any suggestions?" At this point, Audrey and Monroe fell silent and turned to look at Vivien Leigh. Although both women had already established themselves in Hollywood and had gained some fame, they couldn't compare to Vivien Leigh, and there were many things they didn't know. Vivien Leigh lowered her head in thought. After a while, she looked up at Alex and said slowly, "Those movie scripts you left me are all very good and have the potential to be huge hits. Why don't you choose one from them?" The films he left Vivien Leigh with were all good, and Alex was confident that they would be hits, making X films an instant success. Unfortunately, this was somewhat different from Alex's original idea. Alex wanted to establish the tone of X films from the beginning and serve to change the image of mutants. Obviously, most of the films didn't meet this requirement. Seeing Alex's expression, Vivien Leigh understood clearly. She sighed and said helplessly, "Alex, I know what you're thinking, but there really was no need to do this in the first place." After saying this, Vivien Leigh paused and warned sincerely, "Besides, now is a special period. Filming a mutant film again is likely to cause some irreparable trouble." Alex was a little tempted. He knew he was forcing it. Just as he was about to nod in agreement, Audrey beside him suddenly spoke up. Audrey suddenly had an idea. She stood up, walked quickly to the bookcase in the corner of the living room, pulled out a book, and looked at Alex with a smile. "Why don't we film Tarzan? Although he's not a mutant, he's still related to it." Tarzan. Alex looked at the book in Audrey's hand with some surprise. "There's also this book." In Alex's memory, the only thing he remembered about Tarzan was the Disney cartoon. He had no idea there was such a book. Afterward, through Audrey's explanation, Alex finally understood that Tarzan was incredibly popular in the United States, much like the Chinese Monkey King. Furthermore, Tarzan had already been adapted for the big screen twice, and he expected to continue appearing on the big screen in the future. As he listened, Alex became intrigued. Tarzan was originally human, but because he grew up in the jungle and bonded with apes, he grew up to become the king of the jungle. How similar was this to the situation of mutants? The only difference was that Tarzan's transformation was due to his natural environment, while mutants' transformation was due to their innate X gene. It made Tarzan a perfect opening film for X-Force. More importantly, Tarzan was incredibly popular, and making a film like this wouldn't offend anyone or cause unnecessary trouble. Having made up his mind, Alex immediately decided, "Okay, let's make Tarzan." "Tarzan is a great idea, but getting it right is a bit of a hassle," Vivien Leigh said, not quite as impulsive as Alex. She held Alex down and said seriously, "The plot of the movie is well known. If we want to pique people's interest, we need to explore other aspects." Before Vivien Leigh could finish, Alex enveloped the women with his telekinesis and teleported them instantly to a wild place. Having been bombarded with movies in the 21st century, Alex understood the importance of special effects in a film. Shooting in a real, pristine jungle was clearly far more spectacular than using a studio set. Looking at the lush greenery around them, the woman couldn't help but exclaim, "What is this place? This is an unknown, untamed land, and it's also a temporary home for us mutants to rest and recuperate." Alex wrapped everyone up again and teleported back to the floating temple. "This wild land was originally developed by aliens. We have everything you need. Don't worry about filming." Vivian Lee turned and looked around, then nodded after a moment. "Filming is no problem, but what about the actors? Brother will play Tarzan, and I'll play Jenny." As Vivian Lee finished speaking, Audrey jumped up and shouted eagerly, her face brimming with excitement. Only after Audrey finished did Monroe react, angrily shouting, "You're too skinny. You don't look like the character at all. I'm the perfect choice for Jenny." Watching the two women's increasingly heated argument, Alex, clutching his head with a headache, said gloomily, "I don't have time to film a movie. I've already chosen someone else for Tarzan." With so many mutants on the floating island, Alex doubted he wouldn't find someone suitable. Hearing Alex's words, the two women immediately fell silent, pouting and shouting, "Brother, you're the best as Tarzan." Just then, Emma heard the noise and walked in. Seeing the woman pause, a hint of bitterness flashed in her eyes, but she quickly recovered and walked over with a smile. "Alex, what's this?" Nodding and greeting the women, Emma turned to look at Alex again, a hint of confusion in her eyes. "Didn't I tell you about making a movie?" Alex couldn't help but see what Emma was thinking. With an awkward smile, she explained, "The film company is called X Films. Howard's already helping to set it up, and we're currently discussing the company's first film." "Oh?" Emma was surprised by Alex's quick reaction. "So what are you going to make, Tarzan?" Alex excitedly grabbed Emma's shoulders. Emma crossed her arms, thought for a moment, then nodded. "That's a good idea, but have you found the right people?" As she spoke, Emma's eyes stole over to the three Vivian Lee girls beside her. "I've got it all figured out," Alex said, pretending not to see Emma's gaze. Turning and pointing at the three Vivian Lee girls, he smiled and said, "Because of the company's special circumstances, I'm considering selecting everyone else from the mutant community, aside from those three. Ideally, we can assemble a complete production team. Tarzan would definitely be filmed in the wilderness, where the mutants were hiding. Alex wouldn't reveal himself, and future films would undoubtedly require mutants for special effects, so he decided to assemble an all-mutant production team from the start." As for the film's distribution, Alex had handed it over to Howard. The company didn't need to be staffed entirely by mutants. That's not a problem. The students are so versatile, so putting together a filming and production team shouldn't be difficult. Emma was deeply invested in the X Academy and knew exactly what kind of talent was there. "That's good." Hearing Emma's words, Alex felt completely relieved. He let go of Emma's shoulders, chuckled, and announced, "In the meantime, Emma, you will become the chairman and president of X Films, managing the entire company in all future film productions." Emma quickly jumped away, glaring at Alex angrily. "You want to be a hands-off boss again?" Chapter 128. Before the shooting. Alex would never want to do this. If he has the time, he might as well go around the world without blushing, and started to lie with his eyes open. "It's not that I want to be a hands-off boss, it's just that I don't have the ability." "You just pretend, keep pretending." Emma rolled her eyes, very disdainful. "Anyway, I'm busy. You should go to the film company yourself. If you don't go, who else can I find?" Alex would never agree, put his arm around Emma's shoulders, and said solemnly, "Emma, the film company is about the future of mutants. You have to help me no matter what. Just think of it as helping all mutants." Emma looked at Alex sadly, and said bitterly, "The film company is about the future of mutants. And X Academy is equally important. I really can't do it. How about you come to look after the academy and I'll go to the film company?" Seeing that Alex was also conflicted, Emma suggested with a smile. Alex was even more reluctant, shaking his head hurriedly. "How about finding someone capable from your academy? Can I give it a try?" Hearing the voice, Alex and Emma turned to look, realizing it was Vivian Lee. Their expressions changed simultaneously. Alex was excited, someone was finally taking over. As for who, Alex didn't care. But then, thinking of Vivian Lee's stature in Hollywood, Alex suddenly realized that no one was more suited to run X Films. Emma, however, was in a different mood. Though she wore a faint smile, she felt a surge of regret. If she had known better, She wouldn't have teased Alex. She certainly didn't have the time to manage the business, but there were some suitable candidates within the X Academy. But now that Vivien Leigh had spoken out, Emma's attempt to take on the responsibility was a bit shaky. That's fantastic. Alex instantly appeared before Vivien, grasping her soft hands with excitement. I think we should transfer the company directly to your name. It'll be easier for us to do things in the future. Vivien blushed slightly, gently pulling away from Alex's grip. She lowered her head, hesitant. Isn't that a bad idea? No problem. It's decided. I'll discuss this with Howard right now. Alex acted decisively. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished from the floating temple in a flash, as if escaping. In New York, in a secret laboratory at Stark Industries, Howard sensed someone entering and turned to see Alex's forehead drenched in sweat. He couldn't help but laugh. Hey, what's going on, our master? Alex's face flashed with embarrassment, and he quickly changed the subject. Howard, how is the company going? We're working on it, Howard replied, not one to be fooled. Without waiting for Alex to speak again, he asked, a quizzical smile on his face. Is it about women? Tell me, maybe I can give you some advice. Alex looked Howard up and down, a little surprised. How do you know? I guess the only thing in the world that can make you run away is women. Howard leaned against the lab table, looking at Alex sideways with the air of a great detective. Well, you're pretty good. Alex shook his head and told him about Emma, Vivien Leigh, and the other two women. What do you think I should do? Even now, Alex still didn't know how to deal with 4 women. 3 women is a drama, 4 is a TV series. So, sensing something was amiss in the temple, Alex immediately fled, out of sight, out of mind. Easy, just take them all. Howard raised an eyebrow smugly, his tone quite flirtatious. As a man, every woman has a few. It all comes down to your skill. If you're capable, even 8 or 10 is no problem. If you're not, even the old ladies won't even notice you. That's true, but Alex felt a pang of itch. As a man, every woman wants to have 3 wives and 4 concubines, a harem. But Alex admittedly lacked the domineering aura of the online novel protagonists of his past life, who, at the mere appearance of an elephant, would have women bowing to their knees. No buts. Come on, brother, let me teach you a trick. Howard smirked, wrapping his arm around Alex's shoulders and whispering something in his ear. It took a long time for the two of them to finally stop chatting. Alex's behavior was somewhat erratic, a mixture of laughter and tears, making it difficult to understand. Forget it, let's talk about this later, let's get down to business. Thinking about what Howard had just said, Alex always felt that it was a bit unreliable. He waved his hand and quickly got down to business. Please register the company under Vivien Leigh's name. She will be the chairman and president of the company in the future. The company will be under her full management, and I will only be responsible for making movies. Brother, you really can afford the investment. Howard's face changed, and he turned to look at Alex. Although the company is just an empty shell now, it will definitely be a money-making machine in the future. Are you really willing to give it up? Alex shrugged nonchalantly, looking indifferent. Howard nodded at Alex's expression and then asked, by the way, have you decided what the first movie will be? Tarzan. Alex suddenly became excited at the mention of the movie. I'm staying in a forest right now. It's pristine and wild, perfect for filming Tarzan. I'm sure it'll surprise you when it's finished. Howard didn't know where Alex was staying and didn't bother to ask. Instead, he became worried. Will your location be exposed once filming starts? The mutants were in a precarious situation. If discovered, it would be a disaster. Don't worry, I'm going to build an all-mutant crew, so we don't have to worry about being exposed, Alex explained with a chuckle. But you'll have to provide us with all the equipment, from filming to post-production. The equipment's fine, but do we have to cast the actors among mutants? Howard knew well that movies needed star power. Stars brought influence in box office success, and it was clear that mutants wouldn't have any stars. With Vivien Leigh and the other 3, we should be able to carry this movie, right? Alex was a little unsure. He didn't know much about movies, relying solely on the superficial knowledge he'd accumulated in his previous life. In the future, I'll train more mutants to act in movies and create their own stars. Alex spent an entire day in New York. X Films officially launched, without a press conference. Meanwhile, a complete set of filming and production equipment, under Howard's personal supervision, was quickly delivered to Stark Industries. With his complete set of equipment, Alex returned to the floating temple with a sense of trepidation. Upon returning to the floating temple, Alex was surprised to find the four women getting along so well, chatting and laughing together that he almost suspected they were all acting. "Is it done?" Looking at the pile of equipment around Alex, Emma greeted with a smile and said, "My people have selected it for you." Vivian Lee took a look and thought it was very good. Alex turned to look at Vivian Lee and found that she was also smiling. She didn't look abnormal. He breathed a sigh of relief and said slowly, "The company is built, and I have brought back the equipment. Let's start preparing for filming now, but we haven't chosen the actor for Tarzan yet." Hearing this question, Alex suddenly felt a chill in his heart. He glanced at the four girls secretly and said seriously, "Find someone with star temperament. In the future, he will be the top star of our film company and the big star of our mutants. We must not be careless, is that so? Then let's look for him again." Looking at the suddenly relaxed expressions of the four girls, Alex couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. That was a close call. I wish you all a happy Lantern Festival. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 Filming in progress. Within 2 hours, the role of Tarzan was decided upon, a sallow-skinned young man, about 20 years old, tall and muscular. His tight clothes perfectly accentuated his muscular lines, and his handsome face, comparable to Brad Pitt's, made him a star in the making. The only thing that bothered Alex was that he exuded a certain scoundrel air. He stood lopsidedly, his strange red eyes darting around. "This is Remy LeBeau," Emma glared at him angrily, raising her foot to kick him. "He used to be a thief, a bit of a scoundrel. But I'm already teaching him a lesson." Remy dodged Emma's shoe, stood up straight with a playful laugh, but the scoundrel in him vanished in an instant. He looked at Emma with a gloomy expression and said, "Dean, can you please not bring this up again?" Even if he hadn't eaten pork, he had seen pigs run. Remy's temperament and expressions shifted so smoothly that Alex was amazed. It was a shame for this guy not to act. But professional questions require professionals. Alex turned to Vivian Lee beside him and asked, "Vivian Lee, what do you think?" Vivian Lee had actually preferred Alex to play Tarzan, but unfortunately, the situation was fraught with obstacles, so she had to give up. Looking at her future colleague, Vivian Lee wasn't particularly enthusiastic, casually commenting, "He's got talent. With some hard work, he could make a name for himself in Hollywood." With Vivian Lee's words, Alex no longer hesitated and immediately made a decision. "Okay, everything's ready. Let's start shooting tomorrow. One thing we need, the script," Vivian Lee reminded him, chuckling softly as she watched Alex grow impatient. Alex gave an awkward smile and quickly explained, "Wait a minute, I'll write it for you." The crew had everything ready, but they still hadn't seen the script, almost as soon as the King of Sunglasses. Alex didn't bother to discuss the plot and simply copied the animated version of Tarzan from his mind. A couple with a young child are shipwrecked and stranded in the nearby African jungle. Soon after, the couple was attacked by a leopard and both died. A mother gorilla, Kana, unexpectedly rescued the baby, bringing him back to her forest home and caring for him. She named him Tarzan. Alex was writing quickly, having just finished Tarzan's origin story when a thought struck him. He turned to look for Emma, and seeing her standing behind him, he exclaimed, "Do we need another baby for the movie?" "Is there one?" "Don't worry, we've already found the characters for the novel," Emma said gruffly, rolling her eyes. "Now, we're just waiting for your script." Alex nodded, turned around, and resumed writing at his desk. He conjured scenes from the cartoon as he wrote. Alex's script wasn't really a script, it was a story, a so-called storytelling script. Having lived among gorillas since childhood, Tarzan was agile, able to climb trees with ease, and surrounded by many forest friends. His life couldn't be more comfortable. One day, Tarzan's peaceful life was disrupted by an explorer deep in the forest, and he discovered he was a member of the human race. Through their interactions, Tarzan fell in love with Jenny, the daughter of the expedition's doctor. The expedition, unable to find the gorillas, had to leave with a ship. To keep Jenny, Tarzan led the expedition to the gorilla's lair. However, this action angered the gorilla leader, and the humans were driven out. Jenny reluctantly chose to leave, and Tarzan decided to follow Jenny back to human society. However, the greedy expedition guard seized the opportunity, captured Tarzan and Jenny, and brought their men to capture the entire gorilla family. Tarzan's animal friends arrived in time to rescue Tarzan, who then returned to the lair and defeated the greedy humans. Sadly, the gorilla leader was killed by a human gun. Before his death, the leader handed the gorilla family to Tarzan. Ultimately, Tarzan remained in the forest. After a painful struggle, Jenny, persuaded by her father, returned to Tarzan, and the doctor also stayed with her. The cartoon ended, and the script was completed. But Alex wasn't happy. He suddenly realized that turning this animated film into a live-action film wasn't as easy as he'd imagined. A story like this would be better suited to animation, Vivian Lee said, as expected. With so many animals, filming would be a bit cumbersome. Alex nodded with a wry smile. Vivian's concerns were perfectly natural. According to the animated series, aside from the three main humans, Jenny, the doctor, and the captain of the guard, the entire story focused on the animals. Without the special effects of Planet of the Apes, a live-action film like this would be nearly impossible. That's not a problem. Just as Alex was considering whether to change the script, Emma's voice rang out, "Leave the animals to us." Alex was startled for a moment and turned to look at Emma, who was looking at him with a confident smile. Suddenly, Emma pointed to her head, and Alex suddenly realized it: telepathy. The animal problem had been solved, but there was another problem. Thinking of this, Alex turned to look at Remy, who sat bored in a chair nearby. "Why don't you walk like a gorilla?" In the animation, Tarzan mostly walked on all fours, a fact Alex had no intention of changing. Remy puffed out his chest when Alex looked at him, but immediately flinched at Alex's words. However, under Emma's threatening gaze, he obediently dropped to all fours, raised his upper body, and began to walk with a hopping step, showing some of the gorilla spirit. Alex sighed imperceptibly. Remy's imitation was indeed quite similar, but it felt more like a farce than the naturalness of the animation. Emma chuckled at Alex and said, as if to take credit, "Well, Remy went to the gorilla to learn it. What's this guy's ability?" Alex asked casually, smiling slightly. "Infuse energy into anything, then control its detonation." Alex looked at Remy, who had sat back down, in surprise. He remembered the Card King from the movie Wolverine, whose name seemed to be Remy LeBeau. He could infuse energy into playing cards, causing them to explode. Wolverine suffered a heavy loss the first time he encountered him. "Emma, can you help me get everyone you found here?" "The actors, the crew." Alex coughed, regaining his composure, and looked at Emma. "There's something I need to discuss with them." Alex pulled out another large roll of paper and began to sketch. Alex wanted to illustrate the entire story, especially the parts he thought were difficult to film, like the central scene where Tarzan slides on the vines. While animation is easy, live action is more challenging. This time, Alex was much more serious and focused, his mind constantly pulsing with images to facilitate his copying. Unknowingly, over 2 hours had passed, and several people were already standing around Alex, each clutching a piece of Alex's sketch and whispering to each other. Emma folded her arms across her chest, looking at Alex, who was concentrating on his work and didn't notice anything behind him. She couldn't help but sigh. "I've never seen him so serious." "I've seen it." Vivian Lee came over with a few drawings, looked at them seriously and whispered, "Alex cares about this film company a lot, just like when he was on the battlefield of World War II with Steve, Bucky and the others, then managed the company well and don't let him down." Emma was slightly stunned, turned to look at Vivian Lee, and said calmly and solemnly. Chapter 130 Relaxation. With the help of these professionals, Alex immediately realized that his concerns were no longer a problem. They had different methods to make the scenes he'd thought difficult to achieve a reality. Seeing everyone's confidence, Alex was left with nothing to say. "Let's get started." However, on the first day of filming, Alex ran into trouble. The film's first scene featured a shipwreck. This wasn't a problem at all. To exaggerate the effect, Alex even recruited mutants with storm-controlling abilities to create a real storm at sea, creating a truly spectacular and dramatic scene. After filming was complete, the scene followed by Tarzan's parents paddling the boat to safety. That's where the problem began: the child. Emma had chosen a brilliant actor. The child was only about 1 year old and bore a resemblance to Amy. More importantly, the little one was bright, courageous, and cooperative. But after several takes, Alex still felt unsatisfied. He circled around the child until he realized the problem: this kid isn't cute enough. Children are naturally adorable, and their cuteness is truly endearing. The child Emma found was also incredibly cute, but after the 21st century surge of cute creatures, this one no longer captivated Alex. Meng? What's that? On the first day of filming, nearly everyone was there. Audrey asked, somewhat surprised, upon hearing Alex's words. Alex paused, then explained, Meng means cute, little Pete is cute, Audrey said, picking the child up and teasing him with a hint of disapproval. Look at him, his smile is so adorable. Not cute enough, he looks like a little pervert, Alex said with a smile, poking Pete's head as it tilted against Audrey's chest. Audrey glanced down at her chest, blushing, and rolling her eyes at Alex before running off with Pete in her arms. Why are you running? I'm telling you the truth. In Alex's eyes, Pete was simply too clever, lacking the cuteness a child should have. Emma stood aside, her brow furrowed. Then, with a faint smile, she asked seriously, so, what kind of child do you want? Alex paused, pondering. Big, bright eyes, the kind you want to hug and kiss. Alex didn't know how to describe it, gesturing and describing it with his limited language. While Emma was searching for the right child, Alex had to lead the crew to film Tarzan's adult scenes. Vivian Lee was a professional actress, and Raimi was also very talented. Although their acting skills didn't improve dramatically under Lee's guidance, they were no problem for this animated adaptation. The animation had many grand scenes, and Alex wanted to bring them all to the big screen, so the filming schedule had to be postponed again and again. Fortunately, Alex didn't worry about funding, and the entire crew was completely at his beck and call. So, Alex toiled away, polishing the film bit by bit, like the king of sunglasses. 2 months had flown by unnoticed, and the film was only halfway through filming. Today was the day for the most demanding shoot in the film, the animated sequence where the baboons chased Tarzan and Jenny. Alex, unconcerned with the cost, had Emma actually find 10,000 baboons, real, large black baboons, their ferocious teeth looking truly terrifying. 10,000 baboons gathered together, the scene was pitch black, and the baboons' cries were deafening. Fortunately, Emma and the others were keeping things under control. Otherwise who knows what kind of chaos would have ensued. After ensuring everything was ready, Alex signaled the start of filming, and the rest of the filming had nothing to do with him. While Alex was nominally the film's director, he was more responsible for overseeing and selecting the shots after the cinematographers had captured them. Alex simply delegated the details of the shoot to more professional hands. On the first take, after only a few minutes, Alex angrily called cut. The scene of 10,000 baboons chasing each other was simply too chaotic. A second time, a third time. After who knows how many times, it was already dark, and Alex still wasn't feeling well. Rest will continue tomorrow. After a day of nothing but a few usable shots, Alex felt depressed and didn't eat. The teleportation simply disappeared, leaving Vivian Lee, who had come to comfort him, unable to find anyone and had to return disappointed. Alex didn't know where to go, but when his mind raced, he found himself at SHIELD headquarters. Nick Fury looked at Alex's sudden appearance with some surprise. After a pause, he smiled and asked, I heard from Howard that you're planning a movie. Alex was now a little annoyed by the word movie, but he didn't want to take it out on Nick Fury. He hummed weakly and changed the subject. Any news lately? The Hellfires have been getting more and more aggressive lately. Edward Bookman is trying hard to persuade other countries to join his plan to eliminate mutants. A sneer flashed across Nick Fury's dark face. He said nonchalantly, this guy is completely crazy. Fortunately, most countries see the truth and ignore him. After the previous discussion with Emma, Alex had also seen everything clearly. For the time being, he had no intention of confronting the Hellfires. Let him have his way. Seeing Alex's nonchalant expression, Nick Fury secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He was really worried that Alex would get angry and kill Edward Bookman again, which would be troublesome. Speaking of Hellfire, Alex couldn't help but think of Hydra again. Speaking of Hellfire, he had a lot of ties with Hydra, and he had to find a way to solve the problem of the descendants of Atlantis in the Savage Land. Hiding it was not a good idea. Hydra is making a big fuss right now. Red Skull has returned and is trying to seize power. Strucker has no choice but to take the people in the Department of Science and Technology and go out on his own. Speaking of Hydra, SHIELD's arch-enemy, Nick Fury couldn't help but laugh again, and his laughter became more mocking. Red Skull is trying to seize power. Alex was stunned. Wasn't Red Skull imprisoned in the Savage Land? Seeing Alex's stunned expression, Nick Fury couldn't help but burst into laughter. He explained, "It's the fake Red Skull." He turned his fake into real and replaced Strucker as the leader of Hydra. Alex had mentioned the fake Red Skull to Nick Fury before, so he was familiar with it. Thinking of Strucker's current state, Alex felt a bit amused and embarrassed. Strucker was a smart man, so how could he be fooled by the fake Red Skull? "By the way, there's news on Bucky and Logan," Nick Fury complained, rubbing his forehead as if remembering something. "Actually, we had news a month ago, but we couldn't get in touch with you." Alex laughed dryly and didn't mention the contact. Instead, he asked, "What news?" "Logan is in the Arctic right now. I don't know where he ended up." Nick Fury shrugged, then added, "As for Bucky," as he spoke, Carter rushed in, his steps hurried and his expression a bit strange. Chapter 131 Immortality. "What happened, Carter?" Alex was startled and nervous at Carter's strange expression, suspecting something was wrong. Carter looked at Alex, a smile brightening his handsome face. "There's news about Steve." Alex suddenly stood up and appeared beside Carter in an instant, his face filled with disbelief. "Really? A distant water fishing vessel has recovered an ice coffin in the North Sea." Carter's voice trembled, his excitement seemingly uncontrollable. "Based on the intelligence we've received, I suspect Steve is inside the coffin." Alex frowned at this, remembering that in the movie, Steve was found beneath the ice. The North Sea seemed a bit far away. Thinking of this, Alex had to speak up, carefully warning the excited Carter, "Carter, calm down. Let's go take a look first." After some detours, Alex led Carter to the coffin's temporary storage location, a museum in Norway. Alex felt a surge of excitement as she gazed at the frozen coffin in a corner of the museum, especially at the shield-like object clearly visible within the transparent coffin. Carter quickly approached, but when she saw the body within, her joy faltered, and sadness crept across her brow. Alex, lagging behind, knew the outcome from Carter's expression, but she still stepped forward to take a closer look. It wasn't Steve, but a warrior in ancient armor, a shield resting on his chest. Excitement followed by disappointment exemplified the saying that the greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. "Will you walk with me?" Just as Alex was about to take Carter back, Carter wiped his eyes and suddenly asked. Alex was taken aback, then nodded in agreement. The Norwegian night was bitterly cold, and the streets were deserted near midnight. Two figures walked slowly. "Alex, do you think Steve is still alive?" After a long silence, Carter looked up at the starlit sky, his voice a faint, desolate note. Alex turned to look at Carter curiously, sensing something strange about him today. He'd experienced this kind of loss before, but never like this. Carter felt like an old man, exhausted. His mind was racing, but Alex replied confidently, "Of course, Steve's still alive. For years, we've searched every corner of the earth." Carter suddenly grew excited, almost hysterical. "How much longer will we have to search?" "Don't worry, we'll definitely find Steve," Alex said softly, pulling Carter into his arms. With Alex's comfort, Carter gradually calmed down, though the distress on his face grew more pronounced. Carter gently pushed Alex aside and walked quietly forward in the sudden light snow. He said with a hint of resignation, "I'm afraid I can't wait." Although he had always believed that Steve was still alive, Carter knew the chances were slim. Perhaps waiting would all be in vain. Alex remained silent as Carter spoke. In the film, Steve is found 70 years later. Steve's awakening from the ice feels like yesterday, but Carter is already old, so old he can't even remember Steve. Thinking of this, Alex realizes that this endless waiting is a torture, especially for Carter. After returning Carter to SHIELD, he leaves without even saying goodbye to Nick Fury. Alex had come out to relax, but in the end, it only added to his troubles. Sitting alone on the highest tower of the floating temple, gazing at the vast alien city below, Alex fell into deep thought. Carter's words reminded Alex of something he needed to think about. "What are you thinking about?" Alex was lost in thought when Emma's voice suddenly rang out. Turning to look, Emma, dressed in a white dress, was climbing up through the tower's skylight. Alex chuckled as Emma swiftly flipped over and leaped onto the ground. Then, gazing at the rising sun, he slowly asked, "Emma, do you think there's a secret to immortality?" Alex knew of many such methods, such as Nick Fury's infinity formula, Wolverine's extraordinary resilience, and even Sebastian Shaw's energy absorption ability, which allowed him to rejuvenate and maintain eternal youth. In fact, any mutant, regardless of their abilities, could extend their lifespan to some degree, including the super soldier serum. That's a lot. Emma adjusted her skirt and sat next to Alex. She turned around and looked at Alex, pretending to be angry, and said, "Why, now you are thinking about being with your lovers forever and never being separated?" Alex smiled awkwardly, neither nodded nor denied, but just said, "I don't know when Steve will be found. I'm worried that Carter can't wait." "Oh, so?" Emma stopped joking after hearing this, frowned and thought carefully, and spoke for a long time. "I don't know if there is immortality among humans, but among mutants, there are many who have this ability. The Red Devil is a very typical one." Alex rolled his eyes and said speechlessly, "I know this. Now I'm thinking about how to let Carter and Audrey and the others, no mistake, one song, one post, one content, one book, one forum." As soon as Alex said this, he realized that something was wrong and quickly shut up. Unfortunately, Emma on the side had already reacted. She laughed and ignored the question. Instead, she said, "Humans have become more and more thorough in their research on their own bodies, but almost no one among us mutants knows their own bodies and abilities." Emma looked at Alex from time to time while she spoke. Seeing that there was some curiosity on Alex's face, she continued, "So, I plan to build another laboratory in the college to study us mutants, to study our origins and abilities." Emma spoke a little anxiously, and after taking a breath, she continued, "Maybe we can find a way to help them delay aging." "That's a good idea. Let's build it." Alex agreed with Emma's idea very much. Knowing yourself and the enemy will ensure victory in every battle. He already knew enough about humans and mutants, but he knew very little about himself and mutants. "If you need any experimental equipment or anything like that, just tell me directly. I'll come to Howard. It's still in preparation. After all, this will involve many people and requires coordination." The Mutant Research Laboratory sounds like a good thing, but it is, after all, a study of mutants. Mutants will once again become experimental materials, doing exactly the same thing as some humans, which can easily arouse opposition from some mutants who have suffered the same treatment. Alex also quickly figured out the key point, nodded and said, "Don't worry, take your time." Alex paused again and warned in a serious face, "When the laboratory is built in the future, don't do the same thing as humans. Mutants are our people, don't worry, you don't need to remind me." Seeing that Alex seemed to have returned to normal, Emma stood up, patted her butt, and said with a smile, "Okay, seeing that you are calm, I am relieved too. Let's go." Alex realized it a little later and looked at Emma in surprise. "Are you here to comfort me? Do you think I have a lot of free time, so I come here to chat with you in the middle of the night?" Emma rolled her eyes and said unhappily, "It's because Vivian Lee was worried about you, so she found me when she couldn't find you, and asked me to comfort you." Alex was stunned and could only say one sentence, "Thank you." Chapter 132, Sensation Across America. After a night of wandering around, Alex returned to the jungle the next day and the filming continued. The first take still didn't satisfy Alex, but at least it was much better than yesterday. Apparently, the crew didn't wander around like he did that night. They must have been thinking of ways or rehearsing overnight. After trying 3 or 4 more times, Alex felt it was almost done. When they heard that Alex had passed, everyone couldn't help but cheer, and even the baboons couldn't help but get excited, jumping up and down involuntarily with the cheering crowd. The most tired of all was Raimi, who played Tarzan. He had to hold Vivian Lee and run wildly under the pursuit of the baboons. The jumps and moves were really tiring. As soon as he returned, he laid down beside Alex. "Boss, you finally passed. If you don't, I'll be done." Alex feigned anger and gave him a hard kick, cursing and laughing at the top of his lungs. "Just wait, kid. You'll be busy after the movie comes out." Filming was going to continue, and as the first star of the mutants, Raimi's future was bound to be even busier. Raimi dodged Alex's kick with a quick somersault, a grin on his face. Ignoring Raimi, Alex turned to look at Vivian Lee. Although her movements weren't as dramatic as Tarzan's, she was exhausted after filming several scenes, and her breathing had become rapid. "Want a break?" Alex asked with concern, seeing Vivian's tired face. "This role should really have gone to Monroe or Audrey," Vivian Lee said with a bitter nod, "unforced. They're young and lively, and filming would be easy. Hollywood has entered the age of the celebrity. Without a star-studded cast, a film will ultimately underperform at the box office." Therefore, Vivian Lee was chosen to play Jenny because of her Hollywood popularity and star power. But now, looking at Vivian Lee's slightly dimmed eyes, Alex suddenly remembered that she was now nearly 40. He smiled and offered soothing words. "You're still very young, you look only in your early 20s. While saying this, Alex secretly thought about finding a way to slow down aging as soon as possible. Some people age without you noticing, and by the time you notice, they may have already returned to dust. After filming the film's biggest scene, the rest felt much easier. The second half of the film was shot in just 1 month. After filming wrapped, Alex abandoned the set of cartoon picture books and left it alone. Many directors go to great lengths just to get the editing rights, but Alex just quit. Fortunately, Alex has a relatively professional crew behind him, otherwise Vivien Leigh would have to make trouble for Alex. Why doesn't he care about the movie? Because Alex has more important things to do. Looking at the huge changes in the surrounding buildings and the students coming and going and greeting each other politely from time to time, Alex blushed a little and followed Emma closely. "You still know how to blush?" Emma turned her head to look at Alex as if she had discovered a new world, and said teasingly, "Tell me, how many times have you been here since this college was built?" Listening to Emma's scolding, Alex was even more embarrassed, lowering his head and nodding in agreement. Emma didn't want to embarrass Alex, so she changed the subject. "Why do you suddenly want to see the lab?" Emma paused, as if remembering something. "You want to?" Alex knew what Emma was going to say and nodded. "I can't wait. I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. The mutant lab isn't even under construction yet." Emma paused, shaking her head. "We're not researching mutants, we're researching serums. Super soldier serum. The super soldier serum couldn't grant immortality, but it could slow aging." With no other options, Alex could only think of this. "Use my blood." Alex had originally intended to ask Nick Fury for the Infinity Formula, but Nick Fury told him it was like a drug and required constant injections. However, the Infinity Formula's inventor, Professor Bertold Sternberg, had died, rendering it obsolete. Nick Fury was now struggling with this problem. Emma nodded and said, "That's possible, but it may take decades to develop the formula." "What? It will take so long?" Alex didn't understand these things. He thought it would be quick, but he didn't expect it to take decades. By then, the daylily will have turned to ashes. "What do you think?" Emma rolled her eyes, then gave a wry smile and said slowly, "The Soviet Union and the United States have been researching for more than 10 years, but they still have no clue, let alone us." "Then what should we do?" Alex was a little anxious. "Time waits for no one." Emma shrugged and said nonchalantly, "There's no way, we can only wait." Alex wandered around anxiously, with the image of Vivien Leigh constantly popping up in his mind. Suddenly, an idea flashed across Alex's mind. "Emma, my blood can automatically secrete super soldier serum. If I exchange my blood into their bodies, wouldn't it be the same?" "Are you crazy?" Emma looked at Alex in horror, with anger burning deep in her eyes. "For them, you don't even want your own life." Seeing Emma getting angry, Alex hurriedly laughed and comforted her. "Oh, how is it possible? I cherish my life very much. If you dare to do that, I'll kill them all now." But Emma didn't buy it at all. She glared at Alex and threatened solemnly, "Even if I make you hate me for the rest of your life, no mistake in one song, one post, one content, one book, one forum." Alex knew Emma was truly furious, and his expression darkened. He said seriously, "Trust me, I won't do anything stupid." Because of Emma's fury, Alex didn't dare mention the blood transfusion again. He simply left a dozen tubes of blood samples in the lab and left. Post-production on Tarzan was surprisingly simple. With the help of the picture book Alex had left behind, the editing took just 2 or 3 days. The music was a bit more challenging, but the mutants were incredibly talented, and there were many musical masters, so the problem was easily solved. The only real challenge was the dubbing, as many animals appeared throughout the film, and most of them required dubbing. After another 2 weeks, Tarzan was finally completed. The mutants in the floating temple became the film's first audience, and even Alex, who was busy outside, rushed back to attend this unique premiere. Alex also watched the entire film for the first time, comparing it to the animated film in his mind. While the plot was similar, the visuals were infinitely more refined. The perfectly recreated primal jungle and countless animals made Alex confident it would spark a viewing frenzy. As Alex anticipated, Vivien Leigh officially took over as head of X-Film at the start of post-production and immediately launched a massive promotional campaign for Tarzan. Promotional methods at the time were minimal: posters. Alex didn't interfere, and Vivien Leigh edited some of the film's beautiful scenes to create the posters. The posters were a true sensation across America. Chapter 133 Box Office Frenzy. Alex had experienced the blockbuster craze of the 21st century. He had the resources and the skills, and he brought Tarzan's grand spectacle to its extremes. Every frame exuded a sense of grandeur and brilliance, so impressive that it would have been a hit if the film hadn't been edited and used as a poster. After the premiere, the applause outside the floating temple lasted a full 10 minutes. Alex had been standing on the stage for a while, and when the applause gradually died down, he finally spoke. "Is the movie good?" "It's good." The response was deafening. "Did you like it?" "I like it." The voices grew even louder. "Do you know who made it?" Everyone was stunned, then burst into shouts, and this time the answers were varied. Vivien Leigh, Raimi, and so on. "You all answered wrong." Alex shook his index finger and said proudly, "In the entire movie, except for Miss Vivien Leigh, everyone in front of and behind the scenes are us mutants." "Do you know the answer now?" The voices in the field suddenly disappeared, and then a voice even louder than before rang out, "Mutants. We mutants." Alex looked at the crowd below with satisfaction, coughed lightly, and waited until all the voices disappeared again before continuing to speak, talking about movies, X-Film, and the future of mutants. "So I hope more people can join X-Film and contribute their own strength to the future of mutants. Movies are not a one-person thing, and the expansion of X-Film cannot be accomplished by a crew. Alex needs more people to join the team, from actors, screenwriters, directors, to photography, lighting, and stage design. All aspects require people." A premiere, coupled with a speech by the patron saint, Alex, ignited the excitement of the mutants on the floating island. The impromptu X-Film recruitment booth was packed, keeping the crew, freshly separated from the Tarzan production, busy. In just one day, over 1,000 candidates passed the initial screening, with at least 200 ultimately eligible to join X-Film. "You're biased, Alex." Emma, standing on the high tower of the floating temple with Alex and Vivien, looked down at the crowd swarming the recruitment booth below. "Many of my students are impatient and clamoring to be in a movie." Alex and Vivien were both embarrassed, unsure what to say, and could only laugh dryly and remain silent. Emma rolled her eyes at Alex and said angrily, "No, you have to give a speech at the academy. We can't let all the students go make movies. Film is important, but the academy can't be forgotten." Emma had already said this, and Alex couldn't refuse. He nodded and agreed. Then he turned to Vivien Leigh and cunningly changed the subject. "When will the movie be released?" "It's all agreed. It's in a week, and it will be released simultaneously in theaters across the country." Vivien Leigh smiled faintly, and with a hand she brushed her windblown hair away from her ear. She said softly, "This is all thanks to Mr. Howard. Without his help, so many theaters wouldn't have agreed." "Don't be polite with Howard. Just come to him if you need anything." Brothers needn't say anything else, and Alex was no slouch either. A week later, Tarzan finally opened to the great anticipation of the audience. The first day was packed. The second day was just as popular. The fifth day, coinciding with a holiday, tickets were hard to come by. On the sixth day, some theaters removed other films and showed only Tarzan all day. Even so, the frenzy continued. On the seventh day, the craze continued. By the end of the week, the entire country was captivated by Tarzan, captivated by the film's breathtaking scenery, its magnificent scenes, and the love story between Tarzan and Jenny. X-Films became a household name, and as its chairman and president, Vivien Leigh became a rising star in Hollywood, not just a star. As the second week of Tarzan's popularity continued unabated, Vivien Leigh received the previous week's box office data. Before Alex could even look, an excited Vivien Leigh embraced him tightly and kissed him passionately. Knowing today was a special day, Howard made a special trip to X-Film. Watching the two kissing, he said sarcastically, "Vivien, I contributed, too. Shouldn't I be rewarded?" "Get lost." Alex glared at Howard, tossed him the data sheet, and pulled Vivien over to sit down. Howard took the data sheet and looked at it, his eyes widening. It took him a moment to recover, then he sighed and said, "Movies are really lucrative." "Speaking of movies, Alex, what's your next one? When is it?" After being promoted to the head of X-Film, Vivien quickly took to her role and began to push Alex. Alex turned to look at Vivien, who was becoming a powerful woman, and shook his head hurriedly, saying, "Don't ask me about movies anymore. This film company is yours. You can do whatever you say. You're a movie director, so I have to ask you, right?" Vivien said softly with a slight smile. Alex shook his head repeatedly, impatiently refusing. "I can't make movies. One Tarzan has already tortured me enough. Find someone else. Seeing Vivian's face turn slightly colder, he quickly tried to soothe her. Haven't we just hired a lot of people recently? There must be someone suitable. Vivian curled her lips, as if she had known all along. Her expression didn't show anger, but she complained, Emma's right. You're quitting again. The scene froze for a second, then a burst of laughter erupted. Alex, embarrassed and indignant, glared at Vivian. He turned to look at Howard, who was shaking with laughter, and roared, laugh, laugh, laugh. What the hell are you laughing at? Howard couldn't stop laughing, beating his chest and stamping his feet, but it only seemed to grow louder. Alex couldn't stand it anymore, so he picked up Howard and teleported him away from X-Film. Alex was afraid to stay any longer and decided to find a hole to hide in. Where is this? Howard finally stopped laughing, looking at the lush greenery around him. He turned to Alex and asked in surprise, is this the primeval jungle in the movie? Alex nodded, but was about to speak when a strange roar echoed in his ear, and a large figure emerged from behind the tall trees. Dinosaur, Howard's voice distorted, and he pointed at the distant Tyrannosaurus Rex, his face stiffening. Alex hadn't expected a dinosaur to appear here. He scooped up Howard and was about to leave, but Howard held him back. No, let me see again. That's the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The Tyrannosaurus Rex noticed them, but wisely didn't charge, sensing the faint aura emanating from Alex. After a brief standoff, the Tyrannosaurus Rex retreated, leaving Howard somewhat disappointed. Alex, what exactly is this place? Howard turned to Alex and asked solemnly after watching the Tyrannosaurus completely disappear. Alex thought for a moment and stopped hiding anything. He brought Howard to the floating temple and revealed the secret of the savage land. Oh, it's truly magnificent. Howard opened his arms as if to embrace the entire floating temple. I'm going to move my lab here. I'm going to conduct my research and inventions here. After loudly announcing his idea, Howard seemed to remember something and turned to look at Alex. By the way, is it safe here? Chapter 134 The Traces of Hydra. Howard's desire to build a laboratory in the wilderness was a boon for Alex, as mutants' experimental research capabilities were in dire need of improvement. A talented engineer like Howard would undoubtedly significantly elevate the mutants' technological capabilities. The only unfortunate thing was that Howard was only good at engineering machinery, not biology. With this in mind, Alex immediately said, safe, absolutely safe. There's no safer place in the world. Seeing Howard's eyes light up, Alex smiled and said, I promise to build a lab for you, but it can only be you. Before Alex could finish his words, Howard interrupted him, of course it'll be just me. I'm not used to having other people in my lab, just listen to me, okay? Alex rolled his eyes at Howard and continued, I can set up a lab just for you at the college, with full control. Without giving Howard a chance to speak, Alex spoke up, I have only one request, to be a visiting professor at the college, teaching our students when you have time. Alex had heard Emma complain more than once about the lack of teachers at the college, and she'd repeatedly tried to recruit him to fill the gap. He saw this as a perfect opportunity to add another teacher to the college and stop Emma's constant nagging. Howard hesitated for a long time, then gestured toward the floating temple brimming with alien technology. Unable to contain his excitement, he said with a trembling voice, I can agree to your terms, but this place must be open to me, no problem, but any research findings must be reported and shared at all times. They had occupied the floating temple for a long time, but due to lack of genuine research talent, the alien technology had remained untapped. Alex certainly didn't mind Howard's help. Within a few days, a section of Academy X was cordoned off and became Howard's personal laboratory. Howard also emptied out his secret lab in New York, exhausting Alex all day. Howard, why am I hiding all this stuff? Leading people and moving objects were different. Objects were immovable, and Alex had to use his telekinesis to lift them in order to teleport them. After a day of carrying over 1,000 pounds of objects back and forth between New York and the wilderness, Alex was practically cramped. Howard, however, completely ignored Alex, who was already exhausted, and started checking the things he had moved in, box by box, and item by item, carefully checking, what do you know? These are all my treasures, each one can change the world. Alex didn't have time to listen to Howard's nonsense. He rested for a while and stood up, turned his head to look at Howard, who was still checking, shook his head and shouted, Howard, you can't go back on your promise to me. Yeah, Howard was concentrating on counting his treasures, and he responded subconsciously when he heard Alex's words. He quickly reacted and turned his head to look over, "What's the matter, teacher?" Alex was a little exasperated. He had already agreed with Emma about this matter. If Howard dared to go back on his word, Alex would definitely make him pay. Perhaps sensing the anger bursting out from Alex, Howard didn't dare to fool around anymore and ran over with a grin on his face. "It's just teaching students, I remember it. When does the class start?" Seeing that Howard was sensible, Alex let him go, but when he thought of Emma's arrangement, he couldn't help laughing again. "Not many. 2 classes a week, 2 hours each." Seeing Howard's face darken, Alex continued, "Or 4 classes a week, 1 hour each. What's the difference between the two?" Howard glared at Alex angrily, but at this point he couldn't go back on his word, so he could only glare at Alex hatefully and agreed, "It's up to you to arrange it. But, let me make it clear first, no one is allowed to disturb me after class. No one is allowed to enter my lab. Don't worry, no one will enter your lab." After dealing with Howard, Alex left in a good mood. After leaving the X school, Alex thought for a moment and decided to go find Nick Fury. Last time, he had told him about Bucky, but Carter's sudden arrival delayed him, and Alex still didn't know the exact news. At SHIELD headquarters, in Nick Fury's office. "Didn't I tell you before that the fake Red Skull seized power and Strucker was banished to the Ministry of Science and Technology?" After some joking, Nick Fury got to the point. "We took advantage of this chaos to get the news. It turns out that Bucky has been controlled by people from the Ministry of Science and Technology, and he is still frozen by them." Seeing Alex frowning and saying nothing, Nick Fury chuckled and said, "By the way, Hydra's Ministry of Science and Technology has officially become independent and renamed AIM. Their leader is Strucker." Alex didn't care whether it was Hydra or AIM, he just wanted to know news about Bucky. "Do you know where Bucky is now?" "Sorry, we haven't found him yet." Nick Fury shrugged, looking guilty. "We just accidentally saw Bucky's name in the AIM database, and then we knew he was in AIM, but we don't know any specific information about him." Alex felt a tinge of irritation at this. After so many years, there was still no news of Steve and Bucky, which infuriated Alex. His voice was involuntarily tinged with anger. "Strucker knows, right? Strucker was now the leader of AIM, so he should be well aware of Bucky's situation. I know what you're trying to do, but my advice to you won't work." Nick Fury observed Alex's expression, smiled wryly, and shook his head. "These leaders are much more aware of the dangers these days, especially after the mutants caused such a big incident. They're all wary of them. You won't get away with going." It would have been fine if Nick Fury hadn't said this. Instead, his words piqued Alex's interest, and he disappeared without a word. Alex had left a mind mark on Strucker a long time ago, which allowed Alex to teleport to Strucker anytime and anywhere. However, after this teleportation, Alex unexpectedly found himself on a vast ocean, surrounded by the vast sea, with no trace of Strucker. Alex was suddenly shocked. He found that his good days in the Marvel world seemed to be over. Strucker had found a way to deal with his teleportation. Thinking of this, Alex couldn't help but panic. He thought of his past life experience, where his teleportation ability was restricted and he died tragically. "No, I must find a way to improve my strength." After seeing how powerful Strucker was, Alex had no choice but to leave. He finally began to think about strengthening his own strength. Teleportation must be strengthened, and the copying ability must also be improved. Chapter 135, Confusion of Abilities. Alex brought the ability of teleportation with him from his past life. He had been meditating constantly to cultivate his telepathic power, and his teleportation had long since reached the level of his past life. The entire Earth was Alex's backyard, and he could go wherever he wanted. As a result, Alex didn't know how to improve his ability. The transmission distance had already reached its limit. Could he possibly go to outer space? Perhaps he could wait until Alex could survive in outer space. As his telepathic power continued to improve, Alex could teleport anywhere, anytime. Even continuous transmission was no problem, though it would consume a lot of his telepathic power. Frowning, Alex sought out Emma, believing that with her knowledge, she could provide him with a solution. "Perhaps you could try increasing the strength of your telekinesis." Emma was overjoyed when Alex mentioned improving his abilities, her brain racing to come up with a solution. "The distortion in your telepathic transmission is likely related to lack of telekinesis." Before Alex could speak, Emma continued, "When I say strength, it's not the amount of telekinesis you have, but the strength of it, just like air, water, and stone." Taking a breath, Emma lowered her voice and whispered, From my observations of all the psychic mutants in the Academy, I found that the strength of their abilities is closely related to the strength of their telekinesis. You've already created a mutant lab." Alex paused for a moment before reacting, stunned by Emma's news. Alex remembered Emma had said it would take some time before the lab was built, so how could it suddenly be completed? Emma smiled wryly and shook her head. "It's not a mutant lab, just my daily observations." "Then how do you increase the strength of your telekinesis?" Now that she knew where to go, Alex focused more on the method. "You need to figure it out on your own." "I don't know either." Emma spread her hands, looking helpless. "Can quantitative change lead to qualitative change? Or can it be compressed into water like air?" "Who knows?" Alex rolled his eyes speechlessly. "Doesn't that mean he said nothing? Quantitative change leads to qualitative change." In his previous life, his spiritual power had accumulated for more than 20 years without any qualitative change. In this life, his spiritual power has accumulated to an unprecedented height, but it's still the same. Compression? That's even more nonsense. Spiritual power is essentially a void spirit. How can it be compressed? This isn't a fantasy novel. After complaining inwardly, Alex returned to the point and asked weakly, "So, how can I improve my strength?" "I think you could try to develop other applications of telekinesis." Emma shrugged, then offered a rather daunting idea. "Your telekinesis isn't particularly strong, but it's vast. Perhaps you could develop new abilities," Alex said, annoyed. "Can this ability be developed?" Mutants' abilities are all innate, gradually increasing with effort, but no one ever talks about developing new abilities. "You learn telepathy from me later." Emma raised an eyebrow, quite proudly. Alex hadn't been able to sense telepathy at first, but through interacting with Emma, he gradually mastered it. Seeing Alex in a daze, Emma lifted the hair beside her ears, put on a teacher's posture, and taught earnestly, "The potential of mutants is infinite. Through continuous learning and improvement, they will constantly stimulate their own potential, and their abilities will become stronger and stronger." Alex was stunned when he heard this, frowned slightly, thought for a while and said, "You mean, I want to go to the academy to study?" "Yes, you really should go to the academy to study." Emma smiled implicitly, nodded and said, "If you don't study, I'm afraid you will be abandoned by the students." He graduated for several years in his previous life, and he never knew what a school looked like in this life, not counting before Alex's soul traveled through time. He hadn't entered a school for more than 10 years in total. This made it a bit embarrassing for Alex to be a student for a while. "Emma, why don't you teach me?" Alex began to bargain. "As for the academy, forget it." Emma, without hesitation, shook her head and declined, her reasoning quite convincingly. "I'm not actually in charge of teaching at the academy. Besides, I'm only teaching one course. You still have a lot to learn. Can you not go?" Alex struggled. Emma shook her head and walked away, leaving only one sentence: "If you want to improve your strength, come to the academy and report to me." Alex didn't choose Academy X, nor did he give up. Instead, he tried many methods to increase his telekinesis, but all were ineffective. Seeing that teleportation didn't improve, Alex turned his attention to replication. Teleportation was a legacy of Alex's soul from his past life, while replication was the true mutant power of Alex's body, copying the abilities of others and using them for his own benefit. Unfortunately, replication only lasted for 32 hours, after which the copied abilities disappeared. The only positive thing about replication was that it could replicate multiple abilities simultaneously. After constant practice, the replication technique could now replicate 3 abilities simultaneously. "No matter how many abilities I copy, after 32 hours, they're all gone." Thinking of the replication's significant flaw, Alex couldn't help but wonder if it could be extended, ideally, permanently. Acting immediately, Alex headed to the observation room where Sebastian Shaw and the others were being held. They were the perfect people for his experiment. Standing outside the glass room, Alex was stunned again. He couldn't replicate abilities through the glass, another flaw in the replication technique. "If only I could replicate remotely," he looked. Discovering another avenue for improvement, Alex was overjoyed, not forgetting to increase the anesthetic dosage in the observation room. He waited until the occupant collapsed completely before opening the door, stepping inside. Reaching out and touching the occupant's arm, Alex felt a familiar electric current course through his fingers, then through his arm, instantly coursing through his entire body. After 3 consecutive touches, the 4th one was no longer a thrilling sensation. Leaving the observation room and closing the door behind him, Alex leaned against the glass wall, looking at his palms, lost in thought. Replication originates from the X gene in the body. The duration of replication increases with the number of replications, but after 3, replication is no longer possible. The amount of replication capacity depends on the body. The stronger the body, the greater the replication capacity. So, what prevents multiple replications? A brainstorm gradually swirled in Alex's small head. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136 Academy Newcomer. Alex's brainstorming went on for ages, nearly turning him into pudding. It was all pointless, and all that time spent wasted. Damn it. I don't believe it. His brainstorming proved fruitless, so Alex resorted to brute force. As the saying goes, practice makes perfect, constant experimentation will always lead to a solution. Then, Alex began to pace back and forth in the vast observation room, copying and copying. After copying 3 people's abilities in a row, Alex was so busy that he felt dizzy. Without hesitation, he copied a 4th, which was a real disaster. A sharp, tearing pain raced through every inch of his skin, radiating to his central nervous system. The wave after wave of nerve stimulation nearly made Alex pass out. Alex dared not faint. This was an observation room, holding thousands of Hellfire Club mutants, and the room he was in was still open. If he fainted and this mutant escaped, it would be a disaster. Enduring the agony of ants gnawing at his brain, Alex twisted his body and moved out of the observation room. With his last bit of strength, he closed the door. Just as he was about to pass out from the pain, the excruciating pain suddenly receded like a tide. Just as he was surprised, another wave of pain, even more intense than the last, hit him, and Alex couldn't hold it back any longer, screaming. Pain can reach a certain level and make you faint, and then it can reach a higher level and make you sober again. Alex was in this state now. He remembered from his past life that there were 12 levels of pain, the highest of which was the pain of childbirth. But at this moment, Alex was certain that the pain he was experiencing was definitely level 1,200,000,000,000. Don't count the zeros, because Alex didn't know how many there were. After an unknown amount of time, Alex suddenly felt something was wrong with him, as if something was missing. Just as he was wondering, an unfamiliar voice suddenly rang out in his ears. Turning around, he saw someone in the observation room behind him. Are you okay? You kept screaming so miserably. Alex jumped up at the sound of that voice, and then suddenly realized that the severe pain in his body had disappeared. No wonder he felt like something was missing. The thought of the excruciating pain made Alex's heart tremble. He unconsciously raised his hand to wipe away the cold sweat, but he didn't expect it to be covered in sweat. Looking down, he was soaked, as if he had just been pulled out of the water. All this came from you, the person in the observation room said at the right time, answering Alex's question. Alex looked up at the observation room. Inside sat a dark-haired woman. Her hair was black, but her face and complexion were pure Caucasian. As he looked, Alex suddenly became puzzled. She seemed familiar, and he couldn't help but ask, "Who are you?" The woman pointed sideways at the label on the observation door and said nonchalantly, "It's on it, look for yourself. My real name is Tessa, codenamed Sage." With just a glance, Alex remembered who she was, the telepath under Sebastian Shaw's command, the head of the underground facility in the Las Vegas desert, whom he had personally captured. Looking up at Tessa again, Alex couldn't help but chuckle, saying happily, "So it's you?" Tessa looked at Alex, hesitated for a moment, turned her head, and glanced around. Seeing that everyone else in the observation room was drowsy, she lowered her voice and continued. "Can you let me go?" Alex scoffed, staring at Tessa in surprise, but said nothing. "I was forced to join the Hellfire Club," Tessa continued pleadingly. "If you release me, I'll join you and become one of you." Alex shook his head and said nonchalantly, "I don't need your joining. Besides, why should I trust you?" Alex left without hesitation, the stench of sweat already unbearable. After a shower and a change of clothes, Alex had to head to Academy X with teleportation at a bottleneck and replication still unavailable, and after so many days of delay, Alex had no choice but to accept reality and become a student at the Academy. When Alex, freshly washed, entered Emma's office, Emma's face suddenly lit up, like a devil's smile. Finally thought it through, Emma gestured for Alex to sit down and made him a glass of water, knowing Alex couldn't handle coffee. Then she sat down next to Alex, her smile deepening. Alex hummed in response, refusing to drink or speak. He was feeling rather depressed. Emma burst into laughter, pushed Alex to his feet, and said with a serious expression, "Since you've chosen to join X Academy, you must act like an X Academy teacher. You're so sloppy. What's the point of being so sloppy, teacher?" Alex opened his hazy eyes and looked at Emma in confusion. Wasn't he here to be a student? How did he become a teacher? Emma couldn't help herself and burst into laughter, leaning on Alex's shoulder. Alex was still in a daze, and it took him a long time to come to his senses. He reached out and grabbed Emma's towering breasts, laughing angrily and shouting, "You dare tease me? I'll show you my dragon claws." After a long while of arguing, Alex reluctantly let go of Emma, his face full of pride after a dashing performance, and he was almost lighting a cigarette. Emma's face flushed red as she glared at Alex. "What are you trying to do in broad daylight? Who told you to tease me?" Alex reached out and touched Emma's exposed belly again, sniffing it gently. "If you dare to do it again, I'll deal with you the same way." From the beginning, Emma had only said that Alex should go to the academy to study, not as a student. She could also study as a teacher. But Alex misunderstood, or rather, misunderstood due to Emma's deliberate misleading. Emma dodged Alex's hand as it reached for her chest again, and said awkwardly, "I won't do it again." Alex leaned on the bench behind him, turned his head and looked at Emma and asked, "By the way, I will be a teacher. What will I teach?" Alex never thought that he was cut out to be a teacher. He was more like a tireless destroyer. "First of all, I don't know anything. Don't blame me if I teach you bad things. Don't worry, I won't make it difficult for you." When talking about the business of the academy, Emma also became serious. "Remember those days in the desert? I think you taught very well. Teach this." Alex was a little surprised and made a kung fu starting posture, with a look of hesitation. "Is this okay? Mutants can't just rely on their mutant abilities. I think fighting martial arts are still very useful for students." Emma nodded very seriously, and then continued, "Besides, fighting training can also enhance students' physical fitness, which is also good for them to master their own abilities." "That's true." Alex did not refuse, nodded and agreed, then remembered the most important question, and asked quickly, "By the way, what about my question?" Emma had already thought about it. When Alex asked this, she answered without thinking, "You can also go and listen to other teachers' lectures. Isn't Lee still a student?" Chapter 137 Fighting Teacher. Alex had no way to refuse and could only accept Emma's appointment and became a combat training teacher at X Academy, as well as an auditor. The next morning, Alex was dragged into the academy by Emma. "Is it necessary to be so anxious?" Alex took a step reluctantly and turned to look at Emma behind him. "I haven't prepared the teaching materials yet." Emma didn't believe Alex's nonsense, glared at him and said with a strange smile, "What teaching materials do you need for a combat training class?" Alex rolled his eyes helplessly, turned around and saw the gate of X Academy, straightened his body, adjusted his posture, and walked in. As he walked, he didn't forget to mutter, "Emma, don't blame me if something goes wrong." "Don't worry, I definitely won't blame you." Emma never thought that Alex would be so nagging one day. She quickly walked past Alex and walked towards the training room of X Academy. "Come with me, I'll take you to the training room now." As he walked, Alex suddenly stopped, turned his head and looked at the students coming and going around the academy, with a slightly strange expression on his face. Emma walked a few steps without hearing footsteps. Turning to see Alex had stopped, she scoffed, "What's wrong with you? You're not backing down, are you?" "Do you know that student?" Alex asked eagerly, ignoring Emma's provocation. He pointed at a girl walking down the hallway, clutching a few books. Emma followed Alex's finger, her expression changing to something strange. "Are you attracted to her?" Emma knew the girl. She was not only beautiful but also gentle and charming, incredibly popular. Many people at the academy admired her. It was said that she received hundreds of love letters every day, so it was no wonder Emma misunderstood. "I'm getting down to business." Alex's anxiety grew, gripping Emma's hands with a touch of force. "What's her mutant ability?" "Her eyes can turn silver white, with powerful psychedelic effects." X Academy had been a lifelong passion for Emma, and she knew every student there intimately. Alex's expression changed again, and he pointed at another tall boy nearby. "What about this? Super strength?" Emma's expression grew increasingly baffled. "What about this? Elongated fingers? What about this?" After asking 5 questions in a row, Emma finally couldn't help but interrupt Alex. What the hell is going on? I'm telling you, I can sense their mutant abilities. Do you believe me? Alex couldn't contain his excitement. He grabbed Emma's shoulders and pointed at the students he had just pointed out. I sensed it before you told me. Emma looked at Alex in astonishment. After a moment's hesitation, she pointed at a little boy who had just entered the school. Can you sense his ability, controlling electricity? Alex's eyes swept across the room, and new information quickly filled his mind. Information about the little boy's mutant ability. Emma stared at Alex in disbelief, then pointed at another student. After sensing the student's ability, Alex exclaimed with envy, "That's amazing. He can even mimic someone's form? You can really sense other people's abilities? How do you do it?" Emma exclaimed, covering her mouth. Then, suddenly realizing, she looked at Alex with suspicion. Did you copy the sage's abilities? Emma knew not only the students at the academy but also everyone in the observation room intimately. Sage? Copy? Alex paused, thinking of the dark-haired woman in the observation room, then shook his head. But I've already copied 3, could it be? I've made a breakthrough. Alex quickly thought of a possibility, his excitement uncontrollable. Emma was confused and pulled Alex aside, speechless, asking, "What are you talking about?" Alex recounted everything that had happened yesterday, his smile never fading. It's a shame it's not about extending the copying time. After hearing Alex's story, Emma calmed down and said with regret, "It would be better if it could be completely copied. That would be perfect." Alex couldn't help but roll his eyes at Emma. He'd had this idea for a long time, but unfortunately, he'd never been able to realize it. A breakthrough in ability is certainly good, but we can't forget our teaching mission. Emma didn't wait for Alex to speak, pulling him aside again and hurried to the training room. Class time is almost up. When building X Academy, Emma had been very meticulous, specially creating several large training rooms. The layout inside resembled a martial arts gym. No, it was more like a combination of a gym and a martial arts gym, with a gym on one side and the martial arts gym on the other. When Alex first entered the training room, he was stunned by the scene before him. Thousands of students were scattered throughout the huge training room, some exercising on fitness equipment, some punching and kicking sandbags, and still others sparring on the martial arts stage. It was lively but not noisy. Everyone was training. Just as Alex was lost in thought, Emma's chuckle suddenly echoed in his ears. "Are you ready, huh?" Before Alex could react, Emma had already clapped her hands, drawing everyone's attention. She pointed at Alex and introduced him loudly, "This is Alex. He'll be your combat training instructor from now on." As soon as Emma finished speaking, the vast training room erupted in applause. Alex was a benefactor to all mutants. "Your turn," Emma whispered again in Alex's ear, then stepped aside, leaving the training room entirely to Alex. Alex glanced awkwardly at the students before him, their eyes sparkling. With a dry laugh, he steeled himself and walked to the open fighting arena in the center of the training room. Everyone gathered around him. With a light cough, Alex began, "Does anyone know what combat is?" There was a half-minute silence before a flurry of responses erupted, each one as strange and bizarre. "Wrestling, Sandrine." Hearing the students' responses, Alex shook his head mysteriously. None of them. Everyone was stunned, staring blankly at Alex, awaiting his answer. "Martial arts, to put it bluntly, is just fighting," Alex said with a faint smile and a nonchalant shrug. "Fighting? I assume you all know how to do it, right?" 70% of the students nodded, 20% shook their heads, and 10% were still pondering Alex's answer. "Since you all know how to fight, who's up for a fight?" Alex's smile grew sly, like a fox. "You can choose to fight me, or you can find someone else. It's up to you." The students in the audience erupted in excitement. After a long, boisterous chatter, they finally realized the new teacher wasn't joking. A tall student took the lead and took the stage. The tall student glanced at Alex, then quickly turned and pointed at another student off stage. "Teacher, I want to fight him." "Okay, no problem," Alex nodded. Turning to the student he'd called upon. "Student, are you willing to accept the challenge?" The student he'd called upon was about the same height as the taller student, only slightly shorter. He glanced at the taller student standing next to Alex, snorted softly, and then stepped out. "Very good. Now, teacher, let's talk about the rules." Alex pushed the two little guys to opposite sides of the fighting stage and pointed at them. "There's only one rule, no using your mutant powers." The two little guys looked at Alex in surprise. Then, After confirming he wasn't joking, turned to look at their opponents. The rage in their eyes suggested they were rivals. In the corner of the training room, some of the academy's teachers had rushed over upon hearing the news. They watched the two students fighting on the stage, and Alex, who stood leisurely watching, with a hint of concern. "Dean, is this okay?" Emma chuckled and said nonchalantly, "Isn't it just a fight between children? What's the big deal?" Chapter 138, A Life of Luck. On the martial arts stage, the two youngsters exchanged blows for nearly 10 minutes, each receiving numerous blows from the other. Seeing the heat of a fight brewing, Alex intervened. He was there to teach martial arts, not to actually engage in a brawl. He reached out and separated the two reluctant students. After a pause of more than 10 minutes, Alex began to speak. "Everyone saw their fight just now. What are your thoughts?" He opened with another question. Without waiting for a response, Alex spoke again, his face filled with disdain. "Their fighting was too low level, too chaotic, and too unskillful." "Okay, he's getting to the point. We can leave now." In the corner of the training room, Emma, hearing Alex's words, knew what he was going to do next and left without hesitation. The other teachers exchanged glances, but followed Emma out of the training room as instructed. Howard, however, remained the only one to stare down with a look of curiosity. News of Alex's upcoming combat class spread throughout X Academy. Even Howard, hiding in the lab, caught wind of it. Curious, he rushed over to see what was happening. His astonishment was even greater, and he was reluctant to leave. Alex ignored them and continued his instruction. "Next, I'm going to teach you how to fight to the highest level." Alex enticed the young men and women with his words. He had truly put a lot of thought into getting these students interested in combat. The students erupted in laughter. Everyone possesses a violent nature, and if stimulated, it can become a powerful force. Taking advantage of the students' excitement, Alex summoned two more people to the stage for a fight. This time, however, it wasn't just a simple fight. Alex began commentating from the sidelines, giving the two fighters timely instructions on how to fight. The students in the audience grew increasingly excited, eager to jump on stage and experience it themselves. This fight lasted nearly half an hour, until the two fighters on stage were completely exhausted and collapsed to the ground. Of course, this was intentional on Alex's part, otherwise, he could have stopped the fight, which had devolved into a mere show match, 20 minutes earlier. Alex wanted to use this opportunity to convey another key point to the students. "To win a fight, you first need a healthy body," Alex said with a chuckle, pointing to the two students lying on the fighting stage, sweating profusely. "If you end up lying down like them, you've lost. Losing isn't a big deal. We can just try again next time." Alex's expression grew serious for the first time, his cold eyes sweeping across the students present. "But sometimes, if you lose, you're dead." Alex's words, coupled with his chilling tone, inexplicably caused the temperature in the vast training room to drop by several degrees. Every student shivered uncontrollably, clearly frightened by Alex. Alex was well aware of the importance of knowing when to stop. Seeing the results, his expression changed again, and a brilliant smile broke through the mist, like the sun breaking through the rain, warming everyone's heart. "So, in order to maintain your undefeated position, everyone must work hard on your training and strive to wear your opponent down." For the rest of the time, Alex didn't say anything or teach anything. He simply let the students train freely, exercising and sparring, just like the training room he had first seen. Leaving the students behind, Alex strolled to the corner of the training room. Alex had already noticed Howard before. "Why aren't you in your lab? What are you doing here?" Alex unceremoniously pushed Howard aside, taking up most of the chair. He watched the gradually increasing noise of the training session and asked without turning, "Do you have something to talk to me about?" "Nothing, really. I just heard you were here to teach the students, so I came to see you." Howard pushed Alex closer again, then said contentedly, "You're quite the teacher." Alex squinted at Howard, a bit incredulous, and said, "When did you become so nosy? You even came to see me." Alex refused to believe Howard's claim. Howard rolled his eyes, not bothering to pay attention. He turned to look at the students in the training room and said with a sigh, "Dean Emma is truly a great woman, and X Academy is a great school." "Why say that suddenly?" Alex looked at Howard in surprise. Howard turned to look at Alex and said with envy, "Alex, you're lucky to have a woman like Emma." Alex was smug, but still confused by Howard's words. He continued, "Tell me, what makes X Academy so great?" Go see for yourself. Howard shook off Alex's hand on his shoulder and said angrily, I'm going back to the lab. Damn, what do you mean? You're leaving sentences unfinished. That's just driving me crazy, Alex shouted angrily as Howard walked out of the training room without looking back, but inwardly he felt incredibly proud, as if Howard's praise was really about him. Combat training wasn't the students-only class. After another half hour, students began to disappear in groups of 3 or 4, until the entire training room was empty. What should I do now? Alex stared blankly at the empty training room, feeling a little overwhelmed. It took him a while to remember that Emma had told him he could audit other classes. Alex quickly ran out of the training room and secretly followed a student into a large lecture hall. To avoid being noticed, he chose a corner at the back and crouched down, afraid to be seen. But to Alex's disappointment, the class was actually a history class. History's bullshit for me. I even know the future, Alex sighed and was about to leave when he realized the teacher wasn't talking about the history he was familiar with, but about the history of mutants. That's worth listening to. Alex was so captivated by the lecture that he sat up straight, his ears almost pricked up. The history class wasn't long, just an hour later, and Alex still felt a little reluctant to leave. But when everyone stood up, Alex couldn't stand to stay any longer and disappeared. That day, Alex didn't go anywhere. He just wandered around the X-Academy classrooms, attending classes that interested him and leaving when he wasn't. At the end of the day, Alex finally realized why Emma had suggested he come to the Academy in the first place. Some of the courses offered there, such as the Mutant Ability Application and Development course, were truly useful to him. He also finally understood Howard's words, having Emma was truly a blessing in his life. Chapter 139 Combat Training. 5 months passed in a flash. X-Force's second film was released as planned, to equally enthusiastic reviews. Rami LeBeau became a rising star in Hollywood, and it was rumored that other studios were already looking for him for film roles. But none of this mattered to Alex. For the past 5 months, Alex had been immersed in the X-Academy, like a retreat. Arriving early every morning, he led the students in physical and combat training. After a busy morning, Alex would begin his daily routine of wandering around the classrooms, just like any other student. Alex had truly learned a great deal in these 5 months, especially regarding the strengthening of his psychic powers. Although this was only a topic the Academy was still researching, Alex had already begun to grasp the key to this. Perhaps, with time, he would see some fruitful results. After finishing his morning combat training, Alex turned to leave, having to rush to another class. Just then, a dozen or so students gathered around him, their youthful faces now firmer and filled with uncontrollable excitement. What's wrong, you guys? After 5 months, Alex had become quite familiar with his students. These dozen or so were his most accomplished students, possessing impressive combat talents and mutant abilities. The dozen or so students pushed and shoved each other, until finally the oldest and tallest one stood up, a hint of nervousness on his handsome face. Teacher, we'd like to go to the forest for combat training this weekend. This combat training was a training program Alex had planned long ago. When he felt the students had learned enough, he would take them into the forest to battle dinosaurs and wild men. When Alex first announced the news, the students were all excited. They all dreamed of participating in such combat training. Alex carefully examined the dozen or so students and hesitated for a long time before nodding and agreeing. Okay, but first you have to convince your parents. And of course, your Dean Emma. Dean Emma already agreed. We're just waiting for your approval, one girl exclaimed eagerly at Alex's words. Okay, I'll meet you at the Academy entrance. Alex chuckled and nodded, gesturing to the training room door. Now, the teacher has to go to class too. Amidst the students' laughter, Alex's teleportation vanished with a leisurely pause, reappearing in another lecture hall. 2 days later, it was the weekend, and Alex arrived at the Academy as usual. The dozen or so students were already dressed and waiting there, and many others stood by, their eyes filled with envy. Alex, your idea for practical training is great, Emma said, her arm around Alex's as they walked side by side toward the door. I'm planning to make it a key assessment for the students, a mandatory task after completing certain courses. Alex shrugged nonchalantly. I just hope the students don't blame me. In his previous life, Alex hated the sudden addition of new courses. Look at them, they're just eyeing for it, Emma chuckled, releasing Alex's arm and admonishing him, be careful, and keep the students safe. Alex rolled his eyes speechlessly, pointed at himself, and said, Because of your concerns, I copied the abilities of Zio, Eric, and 3 others yesterday. Don't worry, Emma nodded, stepped past the gathered students, and headed deeper into the academy. After sending Emma off, Alex began to gather the students for practical training. After taking roll call, he enveloped them with his telekinesis and swiftly arrived at the primeval forest, the location where Tarzan was filmed. As soon as they landed, every student screamed. They had all seen Tarzan and remembered the scenes vividly. Seeing the familiar surroundings, they couldn't help but turn and scatter, rushing towards their most familiar areas. Alex, unfazed, found a branch to sit on, his telekinesis scanning the surroundings, observing each student. By the time the students finally quieted down, 10 minutes had passed unnoticed. "Teacher, are we going to fight a leopard?" The youngest of the dozen or so students, only about 11 or 12 years old, with a relatively simple personality, grabbed Alex's hand and said indignantly, "I'm going to beat that bad guy to death." Teacher doesn't know either. Alex really didn't know. Actual combat training wouldn't be arranged in advance. In this primeval forest, who knows what you might encounter? Maybe a wild man would suddenly appear. Leading everyone out of the forest, Alex vaguely sensed something running towards him in the distance. He began to retreat, and as he retreated, he reminded the students, "Classmates, the enemy is here, you must be prepared." This sentence immediately made all the students tense up. They stared around with wide eyes, some of them even had cold sweat on their foreheads, and they were very nervous. Alex's perception was far more acute than the students', and his telekinesis could reach far beyond. He immediately spotted the enemy and warned again, "Students, the first enemy is a large one. Be careful. You're all on your own now, the teacher won't help you." As he finished speaking, a terrifying roar echoed, and within seconds, a massive dinosaur leaped out of the dense forest, appearing before the students. All of the students were startled by the sudden appearance, stunned for a long moment, unable to react. Alex sighed at the sight and spoke for the 3rd time. "This is a juvenile Tyrannosaurus rex, one of the largest carnivores ever to exist. It possesses a savage and ferocious temperament. Do not take it lightly." This startled all the students, their faces flushing, and they launched a fierce attack on the Tyrannosaurus rex. The dozen or so students who were chosen to participate in the first batch of combat training were both highly skilled and intelligent. They had learned about 40% to 50% of Alex's combat skills, and combined with their own mutant abilities, their unleashed power was formidable. The T-Rex, unfazed by the students, was stunned and lying on the ground in a matter of minutes. After defeating the T-Rex, all the students' faces lit up with excitement, and they turned to seek the teacher for credit, but the teacher was nowhere to be found. The students panicked, nervously calling out Alex's name. From a hidden location, Alex remained silent, saying, "You will need to complete the rest of the training on your own. The teacher will not appear or warn you, regardless of any danger you may face. By the way, one last reminder for you, if the little T-Rex's parents come calling, be on your own," Alex said, before fading completely. Chapter 140, Gunshots in the Forest. After saying these last words, Alex stopped paying attention to the students. He also needed to practice. Finding a relatively flat branch, Alex sat cross-legged and entered a state of meditation. The meditation method Alex was practicing now was different from his previous one, the product of continuous refinement over the past 5 months. This new meditation method aimed to burn away the impurities and waste within his spiritual energy, thereby increasing its strength. It was undoubtedly effective, and Alex could already sense that a breakthrough was imminent. After practicing for a while, Alex was awakened by a commotion. Opening his eyes, he saw a dozen students surrounded by a group of muscular ape men. Alex wasn't worried, nor did he attack. He was simply curious. Why were the ape men here? This wasn't their habitat. Should we fight? A dozen students gathered in the forest, staring sternly at the approaching ape men, a hint of apprehension still lingering. They had always been taught not to hurt others without warning. In their view, the ape men were human, just like Tarzan. "Fight!" the leading male student shouted, charging at the savages. As he attacked with all his might, he declared, "We won't kill them, just drive them off." With their lead, the others followed suit. Unable to kill, the students' fighting was somewhat limited. Not only did they fail to drive the savages away, they were often attacked. Fortunately, they had been practicing regularly, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to withstand the apes' fists. "We can't win, how about we run?" Seeing the group about to be dispersed by the apes, some students began to worry. The others fell silent, enduring the apes' blows while attempting to fight back. The thought of escape only flashed through their minds, then faded. Alex simply sat down, a faint smile playing on his lips, and nodded with satisfaction. We didn't run away. Well, you still remember my words. Good. Besides teaching the students combat and physical training, Alex also taught them the Chinese way of chivalry. Alex believed that only by morally restraining mutants could they integrate seamlessly into human society. However, it was clear that some of the moral principles of ordinary humans didn't apply to mutants. Mutants were more like the wuxia characters of martial arts novels, capable of leaping over rooftops and walls. They possessed immense powers and, likewise, violated laws through force. Therefore, borrowing the ideals of chivalry as the supreme principle governing mutants was a natural fit. After a moment's wandering, Alex returned his gaze to the battlefield. Over time, the tide began to turn. The students gradually became accustomed to the rhythm of battle, taking the initiative, gradually turning the tide and launching targeted counterattacks. Remarkable fighting talent, Alex couldn't help but applaud, and a long-held thought suddenly surfaced. Shouldn't we bring in the X-Men? Indeed, Alex had envisioned the X-Men from the very beginning of the X-School. However, he realized that the mutants, having just experienced the Great War, might be resistant to the X-Men. Alex also worried that the mutants were a mixed bag, and forming the X-Men might actually tarnish their reputation. Things kept dragging on, until Alex came into contact with the students of the X-School. Then, his thought resurfaced. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to unleash the chivalrous spirit of Chinese martial arts. No more delay. Get started when we get back. Alex's thoughts grew increasingly excited, his hands dancing with joy. There are quite a few promising students among this batch. With careful selection, we should be able to pick out a dozen or so. Alex forgot about the upcoming battles as he began to plan the specifics of the X-Men. Start by recruiting a dozen or so, focusing on training them for a while. Once they've developed a certain level of combat effectiveness, we'll gradually expand the recruitment, using veterans to mentor newcomers. That way, I can relax. The X-Men hadn't even been officially formed, and Alex was already thinking about how to be a hands-off manager. It must be said, Alex was truly lazy. Just as he was brooding on his own, a strange noise suddenly rang out from the distant forest, followed by countless birds taking flight and wild animals running wildly. It's gunfire. Alex suddenly jumped to his feet. Having spent so much time on the battlefield, he couldn't mistake the sound of gunfire. But how could there be gunfire in this primeval forest? His mind raced, and a possibility occurred to him. Could someone have accidentally broken in again? Glancing down at the battle in the forest and making sure the students were safe, Alex left a message. Wait here after the battle. Teacher will go check. Without looking back, Alex sprinted towards the source of the gunfire. Continuously using teleportation, Alex quickly approached his destination. The air became increasingly humid, with a faint smell of seawater. Soon, Alex could see the turquoise waters. Where the green forest met the blue ocean, the faint silhouette of a large ship could be seen. It's an outsider. Alex was surprised, but then became concerned. The place where the outsider had landed was a filming location for the movie Tarzan. If they recognized him, it would be troublesome. Filled with worry, Alex teleported directly into the trees along the coast. He peered in and discovered that things weren't what he'd imagined. Atlantean, the people who appeared on the silvery white beach weren't the humans Alex had imagined, but rather humanoids from the savage plains claiming to be Atlantean. Alex had already recognized these Atlantean descendants from previous Hydra trials. Alex scanned the crowd and quickly locked onto one. Although his appearance resembled an Atlantean descendant, Alex keenly sensed something was amiss. This person struck Alex as strange, uneasy, and yet somehow familiar. As he watched, Alex suddenly remembered that when Hydra had instigated the Atlantean attack, some Hydra agents had disguised themselves as Atlantean descendants, and they looked exactly like this person. Alex cautiously approached the strange descendant, catching him off guard and initiating a telepathic connection. Upon contact, Alex couldn't help but exclaim, Hydra. After a thorough search, Alex finally confirmed that the man was indeed a Hydra agent. However, he was a low-ranking agent and didn't know their purpose. After searching several targets, Alex finally discovered something, and his expression darkened. Stark, I haven't bothered you yet, and you dare to come and mess with me. Chapter 141 AIM. Alex discovered Strucker's presence in the memories of a leader. They were there, ordered by Strucker to investigate the primeval forest and identify any mutants hiding there. How did Strucker know we were here? After dispatching them, Alex squatted on the beach, pondering. Hydra had previously tricked the Atlanteans into starting a war, but Emma orchestrated a swift end to the war, setting up a deception to conceal the news of the floating temple. So much time had passed, and with no activity from the Atlanteans, Alex assumed Hydra had given up, only to find Strucker's attention once again. After much deliberation, Alex was at a loss. He turned to look at the ship anchored on the shore. Eric's power unleashed, and the steel ship gradually deformed, eventually transforming into a massive sphere. Alex then tossed it into the sea, burying the humans and the Atlanteans. After dealing with all this, Alex returned to the students. By then, their fight was over. Over 20 apes had been beaten to their knees by the students and fled. As soon as Alex appeared, a group of students excitedly surrounded him, eager to boast about their achievements. Class, due to an unexpected incident, this combat training has come to an end. Alex, still thinking about Hydra, decided to visit the Atlantean descendants, where the agents had recalled a Hydra stronghold. Instead of receiving Alex's praise, a dozen students were met with this question, their faces tinged with dismay. Some quickly thought, "Teacher, was it because of the gunfire?" Most of these students had experienced a human crackdown on mutants, so the sound of gunfire was familiar. Alex didn't hide it, nodding and saying, "This is urgent. I must handle it. I'll take you out for combat training next time." After sending the students back to Academy X, Alex immediately went to Emma to share the situation and his plans. Emma jumped in shock upon hearing the news. She had long considered this primeval forest in the savage lands her own backyard. Now, to hear someone had infiltrated her own backyard, yet she knew nothing about it, was terrifying. If Hydra had found them, it would have been a serious matter. "Okay, go over there and make sure you get to know everything." Emma quickly regained her composure, her face serious. "Don't worry about this side of things. I'll increase security." I was negligent in the primeval forest. Emma had always prioritized her own safety. Not only was the floating island under surveillance, but the area surrounding the plains was also under surveillance. However, the presence of wildlings and dinosaurs in the primeval forest had led Emma to overlook the defenses. "Don't worry, wait for my good news," Alex said, then vanished in an instant. Alex rarely set foot on the plains occupied by the descendants of Atlantis, and had strictly prohibited any mutants from trespassing. Firstly, the mutants were beginning to settle down and needed to recuperate. Secondly, Alex was content with his floating island and vast expanses of pristine forest and didn't want to stir up trouble again. However, it now seemed someone wasn't interested in the mutants' peaceful existence. Alex teleported to the city where the army had pursued the Atlantean descendants. He didn't stay long, intending to find a photograph of the Atlantean capital. Unfortunately, Alex searched everywhere but found nothing, seemingly lacking the technology to take photos. Reluctantly, he stole a map and continued on his way, heading for the Atlantean capital. Lacking any concrete imagery, Alex relied on his vision, teleporting his way closer and closer. This took nearly half a day before he finally saw a bustling city. Posidonia, the name of the capital of the descendants of Atlantis, also the capital of the sea nation of Atlantis, is a name the descendants of Atlantis used to commemorate their great heritage. Gazing upon Posidonia before his eyes, Alex thought of 21st century Dubai. It resembled a future Dubai, luxurious, prosperous, mysterious, and sci-fi. After a moment of admiration, Alex, following the memories of a long-dead Hydra agent, made his way towards the Hydra stronghold. It took over an hour before Alex finally located the Hydra stronghold, hidden beneath an artificial lake. Alex suspected the descendants of Atlantis had limited vision and hearing, otherwise how could Hydra have secretly constructed a base spanning hundreds of square meters beneath the lake? Lacking the invisibility of the Invisible Woman or the shape-shifting abilities of Mystique, Alex resorted to the old-fashioned method, teleportation at an extremely high frequency, concealing his presence from the naked eye. Alex had used this method before on the battlefields of World War II, but the frequency of its use was extremely taxing on the mind and easily fatigued. However, this time, Alex felt remarkably relaxed, thanks to his new meditation method and his ever-evolving psychic powers. Flashing around the underground stronghold like a ghost, Alex finally located his target, a figure who had silenced and feared many. Clearly, This person was the leader of the underground stronghold, or at least a very important figure. Alex seized an opportunity, using telepathy to retrieve information from the leader while he was alone. To Alex's disappointment, he found nothing. The leader seemed to have suddenly become an idiot, his mind completely blank. In desperation, Alex kidnapped him and teleported him directly into the primeval forest. Alex refused to believe that the man who had been so aggressive in the underground stronghold was actually an idiot. The result of his telepathy was clearly that he had undergone anti-telepathy training. Alex had heard from Nick Fury before that many high-ranking figures in SHIELD and Hydra had undergone anti-telepathy training. Using telepathy to gather information had become extremely difficult. Of course, this anti-telepathy training didn't truly block telepathy, it simply caused the brain to camouflage itself in response to telepathic influence, concealing its true nature, as was the case with the boss Alex had captured. If telepathy reached a certain level, this defense would be ineffective. After knocking the man unconscious and leaving him on the beach, Alex instantly returned to Academy X and pulled Emma over. Alex had been neglecting this training, so his telepathic abilities were naturally inferior to Emma's. Bringing Emma back to the beach, Alex pointed to the person lying on the ground and said, "Emma, he's right here. Help me check." Unrelated sentence fragment. At X Academy, Alex had already given a brief explanation. Emma didn't ask any further questions, and her telepathy was immediately activated. In just a moment, Emma's face turned extremely grim, and even a trace of anger flashed in her eyes. "What's wrong? Did Strucker establish another AIM organization?" Emma asked instead of answering. Alex thought for a moment and nodded, then told her what Nick Fury had told her. This organization is actually an evolution of Hydra's technology department. After Strucker was expelled from Hydra, he brought people like this who had long wanted to rebel and became independent. Strucker plans to establish AIM headquarters in the Savage Lands, Emma said, her face grim, almost gritting her teeth. He even wants to take over the entire Savage Lands. What? Alex couldn't help but scream in surprise. He had long suspected that Strucker had ulterior motives, but he had never imagined his ambitions would be so great. But then he thought it was ridiculous. Does he have the ability to take over the Savage Lands? He does. Chapter 142 X-Men. Alex paused slightly when he heard Emma's words, then turned to look at her, his face full of confusion. AIM was ultimately just Hydra's technology department, filled with a bunch of tech geeks. Even if Strucker could bring some trusted aides out of Hydra, how many of them could there be? Strucker is planning to control the descendants of Atlantis and use them to dominate the wildlands. Emma casually tossed the little leader aside, her face stern. Moreover, they've already successfully controlled quite a few descendants of Atlantis. Alex wasn't worried at all when he heard this. Thinking back to the weakness and incompetence the descendants of Atlantis had shown before, he felt confident that he could defeat them even if the entire country came to fight. Seeing Alex's nonchalant expression, Emma's expression grew even more serious. Control is only their first step. The second is transformation, the transformation of the descendants of Atlantis. Transformation? Alex was puzzled, his brows furrowed slightly. What do you mean? I don't know exactly what it is, but he has a very deep memory of this transformation. Emma smiled wryly and shook her head, pointing to the small leader beside her. It sounds very powerful. Could it be a cyborg? Alex had read a lot of novels in his past life, especially urban novels, which often mention cyborgs with extremely powerful and special abilities. Emma, unsure of Alex's thoughts, turned her head to look at the small leader on the ground again, her face gravely asking, "Alex, what should we do now? Active attack, or passive defense?" Of course, active attack. Alex suddenly came to his senses and spoke without hesitation. "That's great. I have something to tell you." Alex then told her about his plan to form the X-Men. Alex had actually proposed the idea of the X-Men long ago, and Emma was enthusiastic, even more enthusiastic than Alex himself. "Great, it should have been established a long time ago." Emma clapped her hands excitedly, then eagerly said, "I've already started selecting candidates. I've selected 100 candidates from the Academy students. Should we go back and take a look?" Before Alex could speak, Emma spoke again. "Once the X-Men are formed, this battle is a perfect training opportunity." Alex listened to Emma's ramblings, smiled wryly, shook his head, and after casually dispatching the minor leader, he returned to the Academy with Emma. Within 10 minutes, the 100 candidates Emma had selected stood before Alex. These 100 candidates might not be the most skilled fighters in the academy, but they were definitely exceptional in ability, combat effectiveness, and intelligence. They included both faculty and students. Alex still had great faith in Emma's vision. He glanced at the 100 candidates, forming a rough assessment of each one's abilities and combat prowess. You are all elite members of the academy, and you will become the next generation of mutant heroes, Alex coughed softly, observing the excitement that washed over the 100's young, fresh faces. He smiled faintly and continued, "Now I have a mission for you. Are you willing to accept it?" All 100 candidates were exceptional, but Alex didn't need too many. 20 would suffice for the initial X-Men. But how to choose them troubled Alex. After some deliberation, he decided to set a mission and select the most suitable candidates based on their performance. The mission is simple. Locate a Hydra base in a city and destroy it. Alex had already made this plan when he decided to take the initiative. Originally, he was leading the X-Men on this mission, but now it was being undertaken independently by the aspiring X-Men, and it became their assessment task. After saying this, Alex secretly observed the expressions of the 100 people. Not one of them showed even the slightest fear. On the contrary, each one seemed a little excited. Alex nodded secretly and began to explain the mission in detail, starting with Posidonia, explaining the difficulties and precautions. After all, this mission was extremely dangerous. If anything happened to these people, Alex would regret it for the rest of his life. Before the mission begins, I will send you to Posidonia. The rest of the mission will be up to you. I will not provide any assistance. Alex watched the candidates each lower their heads to ponder a strategy, and finally warned, while the mission is important, it is absolutely not as important as your lives. Save your own lives first. Remember, 100 voices rang out simultaneously, in unison. Alex nodded again. Okay, I'll give you a day to prepare. We'll set off early tomorrow morning. As the candidates filed out one by one, Emma approached from the side and asked with a worried look on her face, "Isn't this too dangerous?" "Don't worry, I'll be right behind you to protect you," Alex said with a soothing smile, his eyes unwavering. In reality, with the strength of these 100 candidates, few in Posidonia could harm them. Emma knew Alex's temperament and the strength of the candidates she had chosen. She didn't say anything more, but instead asked, "Why wait a day? Why not go right away? The X-Men aren't just one person, they're a team of mutants." Alex looked through the window at the 100 candidates who had already walked outside, his eyes growing penetrating. Giving them a day to prepare is, on the one hand, to give them some time to recover, and on the other hand, to allow them to get to know each other and, ideally, to spontaneously form small teams. This will be extremely helpful for the mission and their future. Emma was silent for a moment, then looked at Alex meaningfully and said, "That's a good idea." Time flew by, and in a flash, it was the next morning. Alex and Emma were waiting early at the floating temple. This was the gathering place for today, and would also be the gathering place for all future X-Men. As the morning sun filtered through the transparent glass ceiling of the temple, the 100 candidates began to appear in groups of 2 or 3. Within 5 minutes, all 100 had arrived. Alex, scanning the crowd, said in a deep voice, "One last question. Is anyone withdrawing from this mission?" For a full minute, no one finished their question. Alex wasted no time, enveloping everyone with his telekinesis and instantly appearing in a small forest on the outskirts of Posidonia. The mission was to locate Hydra's stronghold and destroy it, so Alex couldn't lead everyone directly to the base beneath the artificial lake. "Well, that's Posidonia, the capital of the descendants of Atlantis." Alex, peering through the sparse brush, pointed to the bustling city not far away and said calmly, "The rest of the time is up to you. I'll be waiting here for you." The observation was conducted in secret, as Alex wanted to see the candidates' true selves. The 100 candidates exchanged glances, and without hesitation, they swiftly rushed out of the grove and headed towards Posidonia. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143: The First Battle. Not long after the 100 candidates left, Alex also left, evading back to the floating temple. Inside, Emma and Howard were gathered around a monitor, observing something. They were both specially summoned by Alex to evaluate the prospective X-Men. "Is that thing okay?" Alex glanced at the flickering image on the monitor and looked at Howard with some concern. Howard, in addition to participating in the evaluation, also provided technical support, monitoring and recording the candidates' movements. The floating temple housed a massive holographic console capable of altering the topography and climate of most of the Savage Lands. Unfortunately, this region did not include the lands governed by the descendants of Atlantis. The planes were visible on the holographic console, but they could not be modified or even viewed. To fully observe the candidates' performance, Alex summoned Howard. Howard quickly and easily resolved Alex's problem, so effortlessly that it even aroused Alex's suspicions. The image on the monitor before him seemed to confirm Alex's suspicions. Howard, feeling somewhat embarrassed, gave a dry laugh and dove into the instrument in his hands, still offering a defensive plea. "Let me tweak it, it'll be ready soon." After a long pause, Howard finally stopped, and the lake on the display finally stabilized, though still a bit blurry. "This is all I can do. Just make do with it." Howard glanced back at the display, shrugged helplessly, and gestured to the massive holographic console in front of him. "This thing is truly amazing. I haven't figured it out yet." "That's fine." Alex wasn't picky, as long as he could tell who was who, see their movements, and hear their voices clearly, he was fine. "Please work on it overnight. I'll hire you sometime." Howard rolled his eyes and walked back, his gaze quickly fixed on the display. 3 people appeared on the screen. One of them must have the ability to leap superhumanly. They were leading the other 2, leaping between the city's skyscrapers, leaving a trail of shadows as they advanced at a rapid speed. "Do they know where the base is?" Howard had heard Alex say, and watching the 3 men advance without stopping, he felt a wave of confusion. Alex shook his head and explained seriously, "One of the challenges of this mission was something I didn't tell them. But there's a telepath among them, so it's not surprising they found the clue so quickly. The would-be X-Men were exceptionally talented, so Sue Sansi wasn't surprised that some could get information about the base so quickly." "Let's look at the others." Under Howard's control, the images on the monitors shifted constantly, showing a variety of figures, from 7 or 8 to a single person. They disguised themselves or used their powers to force their way in, employing various methods. Within minutes, they had all entered Posidonia. The next steps were crucial. However, telepaths were a minority among the 100 candidates, and most encountered difficulties on their first mission. They were forced to resort to other means to obtain information, a testament to the candidates' problem-solving abilities. Some sought information from the descendants of Atlantis, others sought clues from the city's tangle of traces, and still others engaged in sabotage, seemingly hoping to lure out Hydra. As for the few teams with telepaths, after destroying several temporary Hydra strongholds, they lost their way. As they watched, Alex and the others discussed the candidates and Alex's plans. Destroying the underground base won't be effective. Alex's plan was to eliminate all Hydra that had entered the Savage Lands, and if possible, seal out the entrances they had found, completely disrupting Strucker's plans. Neither Emma nor Howard were impressed by Alex's plan. Given Strucker's current situation, he won't give up this place. Alex smiled bitterly and shook his head. "I'd like to kill Strucker and put an end to it all, but I can't find him." Alex's current solution was only a temporary fix. As long as Strucker didn't abandon the Savage Lands, they would never be safe. "It would be even better if you could take full control of that holographic console," Alex said, gesturing to the massive circular platform behind him with a hint of regret. "Then, no matter how many come, I won't be afraid. I'll bury the old one, and I'll drown the 2 who come, not for decades." Howard shrugged calmly. "As long as you can wait." Alex and Howard were chatting and laughing when Emma suddenly spoke, her expression slightly panicked. "Alex, something's wrong." Alex turned to look at Emma, a little surprised, and then followed Emma's finger. The screen had suddenly transformed into a battlefield. The 5-member candidate team was huddled back to back, surrounded by hundreds of people wearing hooded jackets resembling those worn by beekeepers, wielding weapons that looked like energy guns. "Damn, forgot about that." Alex's face changed drastically. Without hesitation, he vanished from his spot and reappeared on the screen. Alex teleported directly to the battle scene, glanced around, and a slight sense of relief appeared on his face. The screen was black and white, and the image was a bit blurry. Upon arriving at the scene, Alex realized the weapons wielded by the yellow beekeepers weren't the energy guns Hydra had traditionally used during World War II. It made sense, given the cosmic cube. How could Hydra have manufactured energy guns? After ensuring there wasn't a serious threat, Alex didn't immediately leave with the candidates. Instead, he said, "Rookies, prepare for battle." Seeing Alex appear, the 5-member team couldn't help but get excited. They weren't too old, around 15 or 16, still students at the academy. To them, Alex was a superhero. Encouraged by Alex's words, they shouted in unison, and before Alex could even strike, they charged at the beekeepers. Alex chuckled, shook his head, and quickly charged at the group of beekeepers. Alex, without any other abilities, fought solely with the combat techniques he'd learned during World War II. He also provided instruction, explaining each move, including the proper force and optimal attack timing, using realistic combat as the basis for instruction. Elsewhere, in the floating temple, Emma's heart nearly leaped with worry. Seeing Alex and the other 5 dispatch the beekeeper in a flash, she breathed a sigh of relief. Listening to Alex's voice on the monitor, Emma couldn't help but laugh. "It's so late, and he's still teaching. He seems to enjoy teaching," Howard said, looking at the screen with anticipation. "When I have kids, I'll definitely hire him as a teacher." Emma knew Alex's intentions well. He was teaching so diligently now so he could slack off later. Hearing Howard's words, she couldn't help but chuckle. She shook her head and said, "I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. He'll definitely run away." "Then bring him back," Howard said confidently, seemingly determined. Chapter 144 Counterattack. The 100 or so beekeepers were essentially ordinary people, their only peculiar weapons being their bullets, which seemed to have an electric paralyzing effect. However, this paralyzing effect seemed to have little effect on the would-be X-Men. Within minutes, all of the 100 or so beekeepers lay dead, most unconscious. Only a dozen or so clutched their bodies, wailing in agony. "Teacher, will the others be attacked too?" After defeating the immediate enemy, the 5 began to worry about the other candidates. Alex frowned slightly, thought for a moment, and said, "Do you want to continue the mission, or return now?" Alex didn't believe that Strucker only had these weaklings with less than a 5-point combat power. If a more powerful force were approaching, Alex would be quite worried. "Teacher, we won't give up." The 5 men exchanged glances and replied in unison, their voices high and resolute. Alex nodded and said, "All right, from now on, you all must follow me, to ensure everyone's safety." Alex had no choice but to make this choice. With the teleportation activated, Alex and the 5 candidates shuttled through the vast expanse of Posidonia, constantly battling the beekeepers. As time went on, the group behind Alex grew larger. Glancing at the 80-plus candidates behind him, Alex grew increasingly anxious. He had searched nearly all of Posidonia, but there was still no trace of the remaining dozen or so candidates, which made Alex extremely worried. "Wait here, I'll go look," Alex said, and the teleportation departed. As soon as he emerged from the floating temple, Emma's voice rang out, "The remaining dozen or so candidates are all together, in a secret Hydra base, not the one beneath the artificial lake." Alex glanced at Emma, his eyes quickly drawn to the image on the monitor beside her. It showed 2 groups engaged in a fierce battle. One group was none other than the dozen or so candidates who had been missing for a long time. The other was a group of humanoid creatures resembling descendants of Atlantis, but with some differences. What astonished Alex even more was that these humanoids seemed to surpass ordinary humans in physical fitness, strength, and agility. Even the elemental abilities of the mutant seemed ineffective against them. "What is this?" Alex felt an inexplicable throbbing in his heart as he gazed at this group of strange humanoids, a slight sense of panic rising. "They're all cyborgs, engineered from the descendants of Atlantis." Hearing Emma's words, Alex froze for 3 full seconds before he couldn't help but exclaim, his face filled with disbelief, "How is that possible?" Alex had witnessed the cowardly nature of the descendants of Atlantis before. How could they possibly be the ferocious, wild-eyed, man-eating killers on the display? 90% probability, Emma said expressionlessly, but a gleam of brilliance shone in her eyes. "If you can bring back some experimental samples, we can study them in detail. Things have changed. The candidate's mission is temporarily suspended," Alex said without hesitation, looking at the dozen or so candidates on the display screen, barely able to fight back. "Leave the rest to me." With lightning speed, Alex brought all the 100 ex-candidates back to the floating island, then reappeared at the newly discovered secret base. When Alex reappeared, the bionics, already somewhat disoriented by the loss of their enemies, froze for a moment before charging at him. Without the task of teaching, Alex no longer needed to hide his strength. Looking at the overwhelming crowd of nearly 1,000 bionics, Alex snorted softly and unleashed his copied abilities one after another. While controlling 5 steel balls to fly like shotgun shells, repeatedly leaving bloody holes in the bodies of zombies, Alex single-handedly activated a tornado, blowing a large number of cyborgs skyward, leaving scars deep into the bones under the sharp wind blades. Seeing countless cyborgs, transformed into bloody figures, still charging towards him, Alex felt a headache. The cyborgs not only did not decrease, but instead continued to increase with the passage of time, and Alex's killing speed could no longer keep up with their growth. In his anxiety, Alex suddenly had an idea. He transformed the 5 steel balls into silver needles as thin as cow hairs and swept them into the tornado, creating a metal tornado with unexpected effects and even more devastating damage. Of course, the most important thing was that this method would greatly reduce the cost of Alex's energy. Only one ability needed to be activated to unleash 2 abilities, a powerful effect greater than 2. Within 10 minutes, the cyborgs before him were reduced to tatters, nearly impossible to repair. After waiting for ages with no one else emerging, Alex assumed the cyborgs in the secret base had been completely eliminated. However, out of caution, Alex employed his invisibility, a skill he'd acquired through cloning, and cautiously advanced deeper into the base. After some effort, Alex discovered the entire base was deserted, devoid of a single living being. With a single thought, Alex vanished from the base, arriving at a vast, hidden underground facility beneath an artificial lake. To Alex's surprise, as he leaped from the void and barely touched ground, countless bullets pierced the air, a dense cloud of bullets piercing his path. The barrage was so intense it formed a massive, swirling cloud, barreling down on Alex. Alex had no time to react and was instantly engulfed by the cloud. The crackling sound of firecrackers erupted, accompanied by a thick cloud of smoke. In the floating temple, Howard stood up nervously, his face thick with worry. Emma, standing beside him, chuckled, shook her head, and said, "Don't worry, he'll be fine." Howard paused for a moment before realizing that Alex must have replicated Sebastian Shaw's energy-absorbing ability. The bullets hitting him would only increase Alex's terrifying lethality. Sure enough, as Howard's thoughts faded, the smoke dissipated on the screen, revealing Alex standing unharmed in the center, a wicked smile on his face. With a gentle stomp of his right foot, Alex unleashed a massive burst of energy, hurling it back at his attackers. Explosions echoed one after another, and in an instant, countless people were reduced to ash, completely vanishing. Seeing Alex displaying his prowess and killing almost all the people in the underground base of the artificial lake in just a moment, Howard couldn't help but sigh. "Mutants are really God's favorites. Even I am a little jealous of you." Emma smiled faintly, but said nothing. There are almost no mutants as powerful as Alex, and the mutant abilities of most mutants are useless. Chapter 145 Strange People. Alex, unaware of Emma and Howard's conversation in the floating temple, destroyed all the cyborgs and continued deeper into the secret base. Witnessing the power of the cyborgs, Alex became even more determined to completely expel AIM from the wilderness. Meanwhile, a new thought emerged in his mind. Just as a thief had no time to guard against thieves, he worried that the descendants of Atlantis would become Strucker's accomplices. Why not take them into his own hands? Contemplating this newly emerged thought, Alex continued to advance. Suddenly, a sudden surge of anxiety struck Alex, his instinct for danger leading him to choose teleportation without hesitation. As Alex vanished, a loud bang echoed. The spot where he had landed had become a massive crater, revealing the secret base. Contemplating the massive crater with lingering fear, Alex's back was already drenched in sweat. Despite his vast abilities, Alex was convinced that he would not survive the explosion. Energy absorption has its limits and requires time. The explosion had already unleashed enough energy to shatter Alex before he could even absorb it. The sudden blast also startled Emma and Howard, who had been watching closely from the floating temple. They breathed a sigh of relief when they realized the screen hadn't vanished. The candidates had all returned, and if the screen still had a picture, it could only be coming from Alex. The smoke and dust from the explosion filled the air for a long time before slowly dissipating. A thin, gaunt-faced young man jumped out of the hole, a faint smile on his impassive face. "Who are you?" Alex wondered, looking at the young man. He wondered if he'd caused the explosion. He was amused by his own thought, unsure why. "It doesn't matter who I am," the young man said, his lips curled up slightly. He looked up at Alex, his eyes burning with passion. "Are you Alex?" Alex nodded silently, his gaze filled with confusion. He had always felt there was something odd about him. "I've been waiting for you." The young man's smile suddenly widened, even becoming a little manic. With a soft shout, he suddenly shot up like a rocket, the arrow pointed directly at Alex. Simultaneously, with a sudden flick of his left hand, a fist-sized ball of purple-red energy shot out from his palm at an incredible speed. The ball of energy passed over Alex, who dodged it, and finally struck a high-rise building, exploding suddenly like a bomb, causing the building to collapse instantly. Alex was stunned for a moment, then dodged and landed on the ground, waving his hands and shouting, "Friend, I'm a mutant too. We can't kill each other." As a mutant, Alex didn't want to be seen killing his own kind. People like Sebastian Shaw had only been imprisoned. "Mutant," the young man sneered, his mockery undisguised. "Just a lowly bastard." Alex was stunned again. He wasn't a mutant? Then what were his abilities? "How dare you lose focus while fighting me? You're courting death." Noticing Alex's distraction, the young man didn't take advantage of it, instead roaring in anger, feeling slighted. Alex, startled awake by the young man's voice, gave an awkward, dry laugh, and asked again, "Who the hell are you? Beat me first." The young man ignored Alex's question and charged forward again, attacking with the ferocity of a tiger. Purple-red energy balls continuously emerged from his hands. Alex was a bit flustered. He didn't dare touch the energy balls. The previous explosion had already proven their power. So, Alex could only dodge them, and avoid the subsequent explosions. He didn't even dare to touch the young man's hands and feet, fearing he might suddenly throw an energy ball upon contact. Unable to fight in close combat, Alex had to choose a long-range battle. After teleporting away, he instantly launched 5 steel balls, having recovered from the ox-hair flying needles. The steel ball was incredibly small, and its speed was as fast as a stream of light, but it didn't seem to escape the young man's attention, as he dodged it several times in a row. Metal control, the young man suddenly moved his hands, and 10 energy balls, only slightly larger than marbles, instantly appeared. They flew out and surrounded a rapidly flying steel ball as Alex stared at him in shock. After the explosion, the steel ball vanished, vaporized, and Alex's attempts to recover it were impossible. "You know my name and my abilities, but who are you?" Alex was a little confused. The young man before him was definitely not to be trifled with. Not only were his abilities formidable, but his physical prowess was also exceptional, and his fighting ability was even superior to his own. He was a formidable opponent. Alex was horrified. In the floating temple, Emma and Howard were completely stunned, only then recovering. Howard glanced at each other, swallowing his saliva and saying fearfully, "Who is this guy? He's so powerful." "Indeed, he's incredibly powerful." Emma's shock was even deeper than Howard's. She was well aware of Alex's abilities. Beating Alex to this point effectively meant he'd already lost. After all, many of Alex's abilities were copied and time-limited. Not a mutant, not a human, and definitely not a cyborg. Howard wiped the sweat from his forehead and began to analyze. Could this guy be an alien? After witnessing the uniqueness of the wilderness, Howard was filled with anticipation for aliens. After ruling out all other possibilities on Earth, he immediately considered aliens. Emma nodded, agreeing with Howard's theory. Judging from the young man's behavior just now, the only possibility is aliens. Did Stark also find an alien relic? If there is an alien land like the Savage Land on Earth, it is not impossible for other alien lands to appear on Earth, and it is normal for 1 or 2 aliens to emerge. "I hope there are not too many aliens like him." Howard's face changed and said worriedly. "One has made Alex so embarrassed, and if there are few more, I am afraid no one on Earth can deal with it." "It shouldn't be too many," Emma said uncertainly. She didn't think of this at first, but after Howard reminded her, she immediately became alert. Alex, who copied 4 abilities, can be said to be the most powerful person on Earth, but even such an Alex was beaten without the ability to fight back. If there are few more, another warmonger, the Earth will be in danger. Howard did not dare to have any expectations, smiled bitterly, and said, "I hope so. Who is this strange person? Let's guess." Chapter 146, The Birth of a Strange Person. In Posidonia, Alex abandoned his attack and engaged the young man in a roving fight, occasionally harassing him with steel balls. "Alex, so that's all you're capable of?" The young man, much slower than Alex, could only chase after him, launching into a barrage of verbal attacks. Alex was furious, but helpless, and could only secretly brood. He had taken up all 4 duplication slots before arriving, Otherwise, if he had copied the young man's abilities, he wouldn't be so vulnerable. Of course, what further frustrated Alex was that his copied abilities couldn't be enhanced. While he only had the ability to absorb energy, he didn't dare to confront the energy balls the young man fired. After the two chased and fought for a long time, the young man suddenly stopped, looked at Alex's back and shouted loudly, "If you run again, I will kill you in your lair." Alex immediately stopped and turned to look at the young man behind him, his face becoming extremely ugly. "You dare fight me fair and square?" The young man crossed his arms over his chest and looked at Alex calmly. "Or, see if I dare." Alex had no choice but to choose to gamble his life. Seeing Alex come back obediently, a smug smile appeared on his face. "Don't worry, I keep my promise and will never touch your lair." "I hope so." Alex snorted softly, and all four abilities were activated: steel balls, tornado, and then invisibility, disappearing without a trace. The young man glanced sideways at the tornado and steel balls, then turned to where Alex had vanished. With a sneer, he said, "You think you can get away with this?" As he spoke, hundreds of energy balls, roughly the size of steel balls, instantly appeared from his hands. They flew aimlessly, hoping to force Alex out. "Huh? The energy balls are getting smaller again." Seeing the smaller balls, Alex decided to take a risk. "I can't absorb the big ones, but these small ones should be fine." His hands touched one of the energy balls, and it instantly shattered, a violent explosion of energy unchecked. Alex didn't hesitate for a moment, and the energy absorption began. The raging energy was instantly absorbed into his body, then it surged through Alex's body, nearly turning him into a pile of rotten flesh. Alex, suppressing the pain within him, activated teleportation the moment his body was exposed, then activated invisibility and disappeared again. Alex's series of movements were incredibly fast, and it wasn't until Alex vanished again that the young man finally reacted. Looking at the spot where Alex had just vanished, his expression grew cautious. "Good reflexes, but it won't be so easy next time." For 10 minutes, Alex repeated the same movements, absorbing 5 steel ball-sized energy balls in succession. Alex used the immense energy to enhance himself, rapidly improving his physical fitness. As his physical fitness grew, Alex's absorption rate grew faster and faster. The young man, realizing something was amiss, decisively abandoned the steel ball-sized energy balls and switched to fist-sized ones. While the firing rate was slower, it effectively contained Alex. Alex watched the fist-sized energy balls fly around, afraid to touch them, desperately dodging them. Watching the young man's continuous stream of energy balls, Alex felt compelled to take another risk. While the number of energy balls was low now, it would increase over time, leaving Alex with no way to avoid them. Might as well take a chance while the number of energy balls was low. Alex found the farthest energy ball, with no other balls nearby. He reached out and touched it, and the violent energy instantly shattered 2 of Alex's fingers. Alex dared not absorb any more, and instantly teleported away. The pain of the severed fingers made Alex's face turn extremely painful. The energy surging in his body continued to flow to the broken ends, and the tingling and itching from the ant bites only exacerbated the pain. The young man lost Alex again, but a smile appeared on his face, having seen Alex's expression, especially the 2 shattered fingers. His decision proved to be a good one, as the energy balls appeared at an increasing rate. Alex could only dodge, and the numbness and itching in his severed fingers gradually subsided. Within 10 minutes, 2 new fingers had grown back, even wider. Sebastian Shaw's energy absorption technique can absorb a large amount of energy. This absorbed energy stimulates cells in the body, strengthening physical fitness and rejuvenating the body, making the regeneration of severed limbs a breeze. However, Alex still couldn't find any way to deal with the young man before him, and could only evade him. Inside the floating temple, Emma was terrified, wishing she could crawl through the display screen and appear directly on the battlefield. Unfortunately, she didn't have that ability, so she could only remain in the floating temple, worrying silently. Emma had considered using a teleporter to take her there, but by the time she got there, the battle would likely be over. Not everyone possessed Alex's teleportation ability. "How long are you going to hide?" As thousands of energy spheres filled the air around them, the young man paused, scanning the area with a hint of mockery. "If I let them all explode, the entire city would be reduced to ash, and so would you." If the young man had known Alex could appear anywhere on Earth with a single thought, he probably wouldn't have said that. Alex stared at the energy spheres everywhere, a bitter look on his face invisible to all. There seemed to be no other choice but to flee. "Since you're dying, I'll tell you some secrets." At this point, the young man was convinced Alex was doomed and didn't care to say anything more. Alex was about to leave when he stopped short. "I'm not human, nor am I a mutant," the young man said, his face filled with pride and arrogance, a touch of conceit. "I'm the greatest creature on Earth, an inhuman." Alex was baffled and couldn't help but ask, "Inhuman? What kind?" "We are the gods of Earth, and everyone must submit to them." Hearing Alex's words, the young man went wild, sending countless energy balls swarming towards Alex's position. Alex's face changed drastically, his teleportation activated, and he instantly vanished from his position. "Okay, it's all over." The expression on the young man's face returned to calm in an instant. He looked around coldly and whispered, "Let me send you to hell. By the way, remember my name, Tassim." As the young man spoke, the energy balls exploded at the same time. Energy more terrifying than a nuclear bomb instantly rushed around. Countless high-rise buildings were instantly reduced to dust under the impact of the shock wave, and no one could stop it. Chapter 147: The Terrifying Tassim. Alex immediately activated teleportation at the same time as the explosion. Under such a terrifying explosion, Alex did not think he could withstand it. Saving his life was the most important thing. As for the rest, we could talk about it later. The explosion came and went quickly. In an instant, the once majestic and magnificent Posidonia was reduced to ruins. There was no one alive. Only Tassim was standing in the center of the ruins with a smug smile on his face. Alex did not escape far at first, he just got out of Posidonia. Looking at the ruins behind him, Alex was nothing but shocked. Such a terrifying power, an atomic bomb is probably no more than this. In the floating temple, Emma and Howard also saw Posidonia after the explosion through Alex's vision. Their expressions were exactly the same, with their chins and eyeballs rolling all over the floor. Alex didn't dare linger a moment longer and instantly returned to the floating temple, his face still brimming with anxiety. "What do you say? What should we do?" "First and foremost, we mustn't let him know you're still alive," Emma whispered, gently taking Alex's arm. "He's coming for you. If you're dead, he won't bother us again. The only thing I'm afraid of is that he won't keep his promise," Alex said with a wry smile, shaking his head. He didn't trust Tassim. His instinct told him that Tassim would continue to cause trouble for the mutants. Alex's words silenced both Emma and Howard. Judging by Tassim's previous words and actions, he was highly likely to do something like this. Everyone should submit to the Inhumans. He wasn't one to remain silent. "Howard, I'll give you the holographic console." Seeing neither of them had a good idea, Alex had to come up with his own solution. "If he's coming, do your best to stop him." The holographic console could control the entire savage land. While it couldn't kill Tassim, it could certainly slow his progress. "Emma," Alex paused after calling out a name, his brow furrowed. He hesitated for a moment before continuing, "Emma, pick out some people and I'll take them away." Alex wasn't optimistic about the future, he wanted to preserve the mutant bloodline. Emma was startled, looking up at him with disbelief. After a long pause, she slowly said, "Let's choose the candidates." These were the most talented mutants Emma had chosen. They were clearly the most suitable to preserve the bloodline. "Okay," Alex agreed, then turned and disappeared. A moment later, Alex returned. Seeing Emma's inquiring look, he chuckled and said, "I lied to them, it was a practice mission. Upon completion, they'd be inducted into the X-Men." Freed from any worries, Alex simply handed all other questions to Emma. He retreated, striving for a breakthrough as soon as possible, hoping to compete with Tassim. Surprisingly, under immense pressure, Alex actually achieved a breakthrough. During the battle with Tassim, Alex deeply regretted taking up all 4 clone slots. After retreating, Alex kept thinking about it, and inexplicably deleted his copied invisibility ability. Alex noticed the moment his invisibility disappeared, and at first thought it was time for his clones to expire, but then he realized his other 3 abilities were still there. Shocked, Alex tried to delete the other 3 abilities, but they all disappeared one after another. Excited, Alex conducted more than a dozen experiments, finally confirming that he could delete his cloned abilities at will. However, his joy didn't last long, as Alex thought of a very critical issue. Alex's clone ability had always been used to copy the abilities of mutants, but Tassim was an inhuman, and Alex had no idea whether the clones would work on him. After recreating the abilities of Eric, Sebastian Shaw, and Tornado, Alex decided to try it out with Tarsem. Hopefully, it works. Returning to the floating temple, Alex saw Howard, hunched over the holographic console, eyes reddened, muttering something through gritted teeth. The untamed land on the holographic console was undergoing drastic changes. The area where the plains met the forest shook like an earthquake, and massive mountains suddenly rose up, forming massive barriers. "He's really coming." Alex's expression didn't change much at first glance. He had expected this. Howard looked up at Alex and nodded. "This guy's fast. He'll be here in 2 days." The holographic console had little control over the planes, and even basic observations relied on the mutants tracking Tarsem along the way. "Okay, I'll go meet him." Alex nodded calmly, then asked, "Where's he now?" Howard glanced at Alex in surprise and marked a point on the map. Alex spotted a nearby city he'd visited before. He teleported directly into the city and quickly headed towards Tassim's location. When Alex reappeared before Tassim, he seemed surprised, then vanished. With an enigmatic expression, he said, "You're not dead after all. Let's go over there," Alex said without further ado, gesturing towards the distant mountains. This was a city, and Alex didn't want another tragedy like Posidonia. He'd rather avoid harming anyone if possible. Tassim sneered and, without hesitation, took the lead, sprinting towards the distant mountains. Alex followed Tassim slowly, still contemplating how to replicate his abilities. A few minutes later, the two arrived at the foot of the mountain, surrounded by a desolate, empty landscape. "Can I ask you a question?" Alex didn't immediately attack, but instead engaged in conversation with Tarsem. Without waiting for him to speak, he asked, "Can you tell me what you're trying to do?" Tarsem folded his arms, looked at Alex calmly, and said calmly, "Kill you. We have no past or present grudges." "Why are you trying to kill me?" Alex knew this was Tarsem's excuse, and he was convinced he had another reason. "All mutants deserve to die." "Is that a good enough reason?" Tarsem seemed unwilling to dwell on the issue. With that, he struck first. Alex was helpless, teleporting repeatedly to approach Tarsem. But Tarsem was alert, surrounded by energy spheres. If Alex approached, some would explode. Fortunately, Alex was prepared, and hundreds of steel balls, under his control, collided with the energy spheres. Alex wanted to use this opportunity to clear some space so he could get closer to Tarsem. Tarsem was also very experienced in combat, and his control over the energy balls was extremely precise. Of the hundreds of steel balls, only a dozen successfully detonated the energy balls, while the others were avoided by the energy balls. Many even collided with them without detonating, demonstrating the power of Tarsem's control. Chapter 148 Mutation. Tassim's control was indeed formidable, but he still missed more than a dozen. This little space was more than enough for Alex. Teleportation instantly appeared in the gap, and without hesitation, he placed his hands on Tassim's shoulders. A familiar electric current flowed from his shoulders to Alex, sending a tingling sensation all over his body that nearly made Alex scream. Alex was fast, and Tassim was no slower. Upon noticing Alex's approach, Tassim didn't flee. Instead, he controlled all the energy balls to surround him, seemingly intending to detonate and kill him. Alex, sensing Tassim's intentions, didn't dare pause for a moment. He activated teleportation again, instantly dispersing over 1,000 meters. Based on past experience, the replication had been successful, but Alex wasn't sure of the exact capabilities of the copied energy. Killing him would be a mistake. "What were you doing?" Tassim suddenly stopped, touched his shoulder, and turned to look at Alex with a stern expression. Alex was stunned upon hearing this. This copying ability had always been secretive, so how had it been discovered by Tarsem? "No matter what you do, you'll die." Alex's action seemed to have angered Tarsem. Energy balls burst from his palms like a machine gun, and in the blink of an eye, the small plain at the foot of the mountain was covered with energy balls of various sizes. Alex's face changed drastically. He tried to touch the smallest energy ball without absorbing it, wanting to test his immunity to the energy ball's explosion. As it turned out, Alex had copied Tarsem's ability completely, and the energy ball's explosion had no effect on him. Some of the energy was even absorbed by his body. This wasn't Sebastian Shaw's energy absorption ability, but rather a recycling mechanism built into Tarsem's ability. Because the energy ball's energy was entirely generated by the energy contained within the body, this recycling mechanism could save him from the huge loss of energy. After a brief experiment with his new ability, Alex no longer had any concerns. Even when the energy balls all over the plane exploded simultaneously, Alex chose not to leave. Alex even activated his energy absorption, absorbing the blast's energy at will. Previously, absorbing the energy ball had been like trying to pull chestnuts from a fire. Now, it was as if Alex had become one with the fire, and pulling chestnuts from the fire became effortless. When the smoke and dust cleared, revealing that more than half of the mountains had been destroyed, a crater had magically appeared on a narrow plain. At the bottom, Alex and Tassim stood there, unharmed. How is that possible? Tassim stared at the unharmed Alex in disbelief, as if he couldn't believe his eyes. Alex, with a faint smile on his face, looked at Tassim with an inscrutable expression. Now the power you rely on is useless to me. I won't kill you. Leave. Who the hell are you? Tassim panicked, his expression becoming ferocious. Alex's brow furrowed slightly, and he shouted, if you don't leave, I'm going to attack. As he spoke, he controlled hundreds of steel balls, sending them flying through the air, ready to strike at Tassim at any moment. Terrified, Tassim didn't dare stay even a moment longer. He left a single word and turned away, I'll come back for you. As Tassim gradually disappeared from view, Alex teleported back to the floating temple. Inside, Howard and Emma greeted him with excitement. Alex, you're so. Howard was halfway through his words when he noticed Alex, who had just so powerfully fought off Tassim, roll his eyes and fall to the ground. This scene terrified Emma and Howard, and they rushed forward to help Alex up. As soon as their hands touched Alex's body, they were struck by a tremendous force. Caught off guard, they both fell backward, tumbling like gourds. What's going on? Emma and Howard exchanged a look of horror. They scrambled to their feet, attempting another attempt, but before they could even reach him, a massive energy surge swept them back. When they regained their composure, they discovered that Alex had transformed into a massive energy source, continuously emitting powerful energy waves. The entire floating temple was disintegrating bit by bit under the blast. Hurry, find a way to get him to my lab. Howard's face paled as he watched the cracks widen on the walls of the floating temple. I have something that should be able to suppress these energy waves. Emma, suddenly coming to her senses, scurried out of the floating temple and quickly returned, followed by numerous students and faculty from Academy X who had rushed over after hearing the news. Everyone in the floating temple, like Emma and Howard, was stunned by the scene. Howard shouted, don't get close to him. Use telekinesis or some other power. After a pause, Howard shouted again, whatever you do, get him to my lab. Everyone was startled by Howard's cry, then quickly reacted and tried their own methods. However, most failed, unable to move Alex at all, and many were even injured by the energy shockwave. Fortunately, after many attempts, they finally joined forces and used active attacks to gradually push Alex out of the floating temple and towards Academy X. Unrelated sentence fragment, no mistake, one song, one post, one content, 1-6, 1-9, one book, one forum, one look. Looking at the buildings being destroyed along the way, Em worried. Howard, can you get that thing out? Howard smiled wryly and shook his head, saying helplessly, we can't move the thing. If we do, it's useless. We'll just have to take him there. Fortunately, Academy X wasn't too far from the floating temple. With their combined efforts, they finally got Alex into Howard's lab and into a device resembling the observation room where Sebastian Shaw and the others were imprisoned. It was surprisingly effective. As soon as Alex entered, the cascading energy waves suddenly ceased. Howard, what should we do now? Emma was completely panicked, staring blankly at Alex as he gradually emerged from the room. Howard wiped the sweat from his forehead, sighed, and said, let me check it out first. Find out what's going on. With that, Howard left Emma behind and dove into his equipment. There was no sound anymore, only the whirring of electricity. Emma was stunned for a long time before finally coming to her senses. She glanced at Howard, who was concentrating on the instrument, then at Alex inside. She took a deep breath and walked out of Howard's laboratory. Because of Alex's mutation, a riot broke out on the floating island, and Emma had to go out to calm everyone down. When Emma walked out of the laboratory, Howard suddenly raised his head, looked at Emma's disappearing back, turned his head to look at the unconscious Alex, and then looked down at the data in his hand. He couldn't help but sigh and said, Alex, you must make it. Chapter 149 Inhumans. Emma returned to the lab shortly after leaving. She glanced at Alex, then slowly walked towards Howard, her face filled with hope as she cautiously asked, Alex, How is he? Howard hesitated for a moment before saying, "We're still unclear. We need to observe for a while." Emma nodded silently, then turned to the instrument enclosing Alex. She placed her hands on the transparent glass and stared at Alex, whose eyes were closed, tears welling in her eyes. "Is everything out there taken care of?" Howard asked, trying to find the answer. Emma nodded imperceptibly, her eyes never leaving Alex. Howard looked at Emma, smiled wryly, and shook his head, saying nothing more. The lab fell into a long silence. As the sunlight slanted and the room grew dim, Emma finally spoke again. "Howard, do you know why Alex is like this?" Emma had been racking her brains to figure out why Alex had fallen so suddenly, but she couldn't figure it out. Howard stepped out from behind the table and walked outside the instrument. Looking at Alex inside, he slowly said, "The exact cause isn't clear, but I suspect it's due to oversaturation of absorbed energy." After a brief pause, Howard continued, "He's constantly emitting energy shockwaves, which is actually a way to release the excess energy within his body. You're saying that once Alex's excess energy is released, he'll get better?" Emma's frozen face finally moved, barely suppressed excitement. Howard hesitated for a moment, then finally nodded. "Judging from the current situation, that seems to be the case. Then I'm relieved." Emma couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief at Howard's answer, her expression softening. Behind him, Howard was tempted to tell the truth, but seeing the expression on Emma's face, he thought better of it. In fact, based on Howard's recent examinations, Alex's energy level was indeed enormous, but it shouldn't have reached saturation. After all, Alex wasn't stupid enough to absorb energy so recklessly. Howard had no idea what had happened to Alex. All he knew for sure was that the energy within Alex was being released in the form of shockwaves. However, these energy waves were also damaging Alex's body as they were released. If this continued, Alex would likely be destroyed by the constant energy waves. Howard had been trying to stop the release of Alex's energy, but unfortunately, he had been unsuccessful. "Emma, can you find a way to get me back to New York?" Howard hesitated for a moment before speaking. The situation was beyond his ability, and he needed help. Emma paused, then nodded and said, "Okay, I'll arrange it." As she spoke, Emma contacted a mutant with teleportation abilities. While his abilities weren't as powerful as Alex's, they could reach far greater distances than normal teleportation. With the help of the teleporter, Howard quickly returned to New York. "My friend, wait here for a moment. I'll go find some people and be back shortly." After leaving the transporter at Stark Industries, Howard quickly headed for a secret location in New York. 10 minutes later, in Director Nick Fury's office at SHIELD headquarters, Howard explained Alex's situation. Nick Fury's brow furrowed, and he asked seriously, "What do you need from me?" "Reliable scientists specializing in energy and the human body." "How many?" "The more, the better." Howard's face lit up, eager to speak. "But they must be reliable. The secrets there must not be exposed." Nick Fury pondered for a long time, then nodded and said, "5 people, absolutely reliable. Can you get them here now?" Howard was genuinely worried something might happen to Alex, and he didn't dare waste any time. "I have people waiting there to take us there. I've notified them, and they'll be here shortly," Nick Fury explained, then asked, "Is it really that serious?" Nick Fury had always admired Alex and never believed anyone could hurt him. Howard smiled wryly and nodded. "If it weren't for a dire situation, I wouldn't be begging you." "Who exactly is that Tarsem?" Howard couldn't help but shudder at the thought of the terrifyingly powerful Tarsem. "I don't know. He calls himself an Inhuman." "Inhuman?" Nick Fury's dark face flickered with surprise, his eyes widening. Howard looked at Nick Fury, whose expression changed drastically, and asked in surprise, "What's wrong? Do you know something?" 7 days ago, something happened in Ohio. Nick Fury's expression grew strange. Everyone in a small town fell into coma. Thousands of people at the same time. Could he be an Inhuman too? Howard couldn't help but stand up. After witnessing Tarsem's power, Howard also felt a slight fear of Inhumans. "At first we thought it was the work of mutants." Nick Fury smiled bitterly and shook his head, "but then we tracked it down and found the real culprit, a middle-aged man who also called himself an Inhuman." "Anything else you found out?" Howard felt that his original guess might come true. If Inhumans emerged on a large scale, the whole world might be in chaos. "In fact, it was that man who took the initiative to find us." Nick Fury's dark face flushed slightly, and he said with embarrassment, "He also warned us that he was here to hunt down the fugitives." "This is an internal matter of their Inhuman race?" and they don't want humans to interfere, and humans. Howard stood up suddenly, his expression was very interesting. Yes, the Inhumans. Nick Fury's tone became helpless as he spoke, a race that may be even more powerful than mutants. Howard was completely speechless. After a moment of silence, he suddenly stood up again. Did he say who the fugitive is? You mean, that Tarsem is their fugitive? Nick Fury's eyes narrowed, and he suddenly realized, I'll contact that person right away. By the way, Alex's matter should also be blamed on them. Howard became more and more excited the more he thought about it. The man was injured by their fugitive. They must heal Alex. Nick Fury's eyes lit up, and he said with joy, that's possible. Apart from his weird temper, that person is a good person. Chapter 150 Leave the people to me. Soon, Howard met the alien who had plunged the entire town into trance. He was a plain-looking middle-aged man, looking sleepy and languid. There was nothing distinctive about him, the kind you wouldn't even recognize in a crowd. Fortunately, Howard had been warned by Nick Fury. A flicker of surprise flashed across his eyes, but his expression remained unchanged throughout, a touch of respect beneath his composure. I heard you've met one of my people. A lazy voice came from the middle-aged man, but oddly, he didn't speak. Howard was slightly surprised, but he quickly recovered, nodded and said, yes, he calls himself Tarsem, and he is an alien. Tassim, the middle-aged man's voice suddenly changed, and there was an undisguised murderous intent in his cold and strange laughter. Where's he now? Howard was startled by the sudden reversal of the middle-aged man. It took him a long time to calm down. He swallowed and explained slowly, at first, he broke into my friend's refuge, and they fought. Tarsem was defeated by my friend and fled. I don't know where he is now. After saying this, Howard said the second sentence without taking a breath, but he said that he would come to seek revenge on my friend. The middle-aged man's expression seemed to freeze for a second, and then he returned to a calm state. He raised his head slightly, looked at Howard with a squint, and asked with a hint of sarcasm, your friend? Howard could hear the discontent in the middle-aged man's voice, but having reached this point, he was determined to persevere. Yes, after we defeated Tarsem, my friend suddenly experienced an energy explosion, and he remains unconscious. What? The middle-aged man's expression finally showed a long pause of surprise, his half-lidded eyes finally opening wide in a look of disbelief. He had originally assumed Howard's friend had perished at Tarsem's hands, but he hadn't expected him to be merely unconscious, and even then, in the midst of an energy explosion. Seeing this usually aloof and arrogant alien finally moved, Howard couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He repeated, after we defeated Tarsem, he suddenly passed out, and the energy within him was unleashed for no apparent reason. It's incredibly powerful. Come on, take me to see him. The middle-aged man, his heart pounding, finally couldn't help but stand up, seemingly even more eager than Howard. After I see him, I'll find a way to revive him. The middle-aged man, perceiving Howard's intentions, took the initiative and made this request. Howard's face lit up, and he quickly said, I have a portal that leads directly to my friend's retreat. A few minutes later, Howard, Nick Fury, and a group of scientists, along with a middle-aged man, passed through the portal and arrived at the floating island. To avoid trouble, the portal was located in Howard's laboratory. Unless something unexpected happened, none of the people would have a chance to leave. Emma, who had been staying in the lab, finally changed her expression as Howard and his men appeared. She even contacted Howard telepathically. Howard, who are they? I've hired scientists to help revive Alex. Howard's expression changed slightly, but he quickly realized what was happening and mentally replied, they're all hired by Nick Fury. There's no need to worry about their safety. Upon hearing that these people were coming to rescue Alex, Emma smiled and greeted them. Not listening carefully to the rest of the conversation, the middle-aged alien didn't even bother to pay Emma any attention. He walked right past her to the instrument enclosing Alex, carefully observing him inside with a faintly odd expression on his face. Howard, who had been keeping an eye on the middle-aged alien, saw the look on his face and whispered, since he fell unconscious, Alex's body has been releasing massive energy shockwaves. This is the only way I can suppress them. You said his name was Alex. Compared to the others, the middle-aged alien seemed more concerned with Alex's name, and his expression grew even more bizarre. Howard looked at the middle-aged alien in bewilderment, wondering why he'd asked such a question. Even with that in mind, he nodded. Yes, he's my friend, Alex. The alien fell silent, then turned to Howard and said, can I go in and take a look? Huh? Howard, Bewildered by the alien's increasingly bizarre questions, paused for a moment before answering, "Sure, but be careful. The energy shockwaves inside will be very strong." The alien nodded nonchalantly and followed Howard to the entrance of the instrument. Elsewhere, at Nick Fury's behest, 5 scientists had already quickly entered the research facility. Holding Howard's recorded data, they quickly approached the instrument and began to examine it carefully. Seeing the alien approaching, one scientist couldn't resist the urge to follow, but Howard refused without hesitation. He was an alien with superpowers, so Howard could let him in without hesitation. An ordinary human scientist might be killed by the energy blast if they entered. Because of Alex, Emma and Nick Fury exchanged a simple hello and quickly became familiar with each other. After and during a long period of suspicion, she finally couldn't contain her doubts and secretly pointed at the middle-aged Inhuman who had already entered the instrument. She asked in confusion, "Nick, why do I feel like there's something different about that person?" "He's an Inhuman," Nick Fury said. He already knew Emma, but this was their first meeting. Secretly admiring Alex's good fortune, he casually replied, "He's out to capture the Inhuman fugitive, Tarsem." Emma was stunned by this, then regained her composure. Her telepathy activated again, and she asked worriedly, "Is this safe?" After her experience with Tarsem, Emma subconsciously felt a slight aversion to Inhumans. Especially after Alex was injured and unconscious, Emma's feelings towards Inhumans became even more intense, a feeling of mortal enmity. Unrelated sentence fragment. 1691. "He's a bit arrogant, sure, but he's a nice guy." Nick Fury couldn't say much more, so he could only offer this reassurance. "He's an Inhuman, too, so he should be able to save Alex." "I hope so," Emma said, still skeptical. With a low sigh, she slowly approached the instrument, her eyes flickering to the Inhuman circling Alex. Time slipped by, and the 5 scientists reached a preliminary conclusion. Like Howard's observations, Alex's condition was critical, but they had no immediate solution and needed further observation. When Emma learned this, the atmosphere in the lab plummeted to a freezing point, until the middle-aged Inhuman emerged. To everyone's surprise, he said something that stunned everyone. "Leave him to me." The middle-aged alien's gaze swept across everyone, finally landing on Emma, the only woman present. "I promise to save him." Want to know more exciting updates about Marvel Mind Transporter? Open WeChat now, click the plus sign in the upper right corner, select Add Friends and add the official account, search for Kitty and Hongwen Wang, follow the official account, and never miss an update. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.